It's 5:30 a.m. Let's be.
What is up, everyone? We are here again for another week of Fantasy First Rounders Live. And more importantly, it is week one of the NFL season. And big news, not only do I have my man, real Ryan Hicks over here, we have back the man, the myth, the legend, Billy the Dragon, back from a little bit of an escapade, if you will. We're glad to have you back, Billy. How are you doing?
Doing well, guys. Mr. Faces, good to see you.
Hey, I think we're
Yes,
both
sir.
stoked to have you here. Absolutely. We're stoked to have you back. Hey, we have a ton to get through, right? It's week one. There's some fantastic matchups, both on screen and on fantasy. So, are we ready to just jump right into it?
Yeah, let's rock. Week one,
I do
baby.
want
All
to make
right.
one comment. The St. Jude Bowl is finishing up its last
Yes.
draft as we speak. We have 10 divisions this year. It's going to be really exciting. Looking forward to shouting out week one's high scores and division leaders next week. Well, I guess high scores and division leaders are the same thing week one. So we'll do one shout out for high scores and division leaders. We'll do two from then on out. I'm excited, guys. I'm so
Oh,
ready.
yeah.
I've been waiting for the St. Jude Bowl for so long. So here we go.
Yeah, huge
Yeah, if you
effort.
haven't been in the St. Jude Bowl before, go ahead, Billy.
I was just, congratulating Ryan on a huge effort. He really led the ship this summer, throwing everything together, getting everybody in divisions. I mean, this guy personally reaching out to people to find out when their draft, could take place, how they would prefer it, and paired up people with like visions and like minds and like needs, and really a flawless draft season for the St. Jude
Yeah,
Bowl.
went well.
2 years in a row, man. Here we go. Congratulations, guys. We have a hell of an event, and I'm winning it this year. So
I'm not
I
if I
love
have
it.
anything to say about it. 5 RBs, baby. 5 straight running backs.
that's
You
insane.
gotta love it.
Yes.
But hey, if you haven't been in the St. Jude Bowl before, you're new to the show. Every week during the season, we go through like Ryan said, the high scores and league leaders for the St. Jude Bowl. So make sure you're tuned in so that you can hear that, get your updates on it. Um, but with all that being said, moving in to the first matchup tomorrow night, Thursday night football, we have the Cowboys at the Bucks. Tom Brady won the Super Bowl last year, obviously beating Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Now you have Dak coming into town with the Cowboys, right? So looking at these teams, Dak, Zeke, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz. Can't forget about those guys. Coming up against uh, uh, really every single starter from last year still with the Bucks. Tom Brady, Rojo, Leonard Fournette, Keyshawn Vaughn, kind of a deep backfield there. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Antonio Brown, OJ Howard, and Gronk. Can't forget Gronk. So many big names in fantasy here. Ryan, who are you focusing on? Who do you think isn't going to get the touches, maybe? And then we'll get back into the kind of the spread, the over under there.
Well, we don't have anything, as far as I'm aware of, there's nothing official yet on Chris Godwin, so that kind of will affect some things for me, but I'm Tampa Bay all day on this matchup. Um, I do think there's some sneaky plays on the Cowboys side as well. I know that the Bucks D has that elite level kind of characteristic people think about. They can stop the run. They have all those good cornerbacks, but I think that the Dallas offense is just too much, and they're going to overcome that defense. This is going to be a high scoring game. I know. Thank you, Billy, for getting all the spreads and the over unders. We got the Bucks -8.5, and then the over under 51.5. We'll talk about that at the end. But this is a great fantasy game. You want to get exposure to this. I think Antonio Brown and OJ Howard will get the most benefit if Godwin sits. If not, it's the Evans Godwin show with some AB and OJ sprinkled in. Brady was recently talking about OJ Howard and how big of a season he's poised to have. I can see that happening. I'm really interested to see which one of the Bucks backs gets the most touches, and whether that's going to remain a constant throughout the year, or is it going to literally be hot hand in the moment. For me in DFS, Brady looks like a no-brainer. Evans is the safe play. AB has excellent price point if Godwin does not play. If he does play, I'm going to avoid, and I'd like to go to Godwin rather than Evans. On the other side, it's
real
Cooper I
quick.
want.
Godwin was not on the final injury report.
Okay, good.
So he will, as of now, will be playing tomorrow.
I'm so happy because I have so much Chris Godwin. The way we draft receivers, he just kept landing to me as that wide receiver that just kind of hangs around outside of that last batch. 4th round, give me Chris Godwin all day long.
Yeah, that's happened to me too, Billy. I was surprised at my Godwin exposure when I was putting in the latest drafts I've done. It's a lot. And for the same reason, I get on my backs and then Godwin's just there, and I say, okay. But I like Cooper. I still think he's their best receiver. And, man, I know that this is such stupid stuff, but watching some of the clips from him juking out people, that's impressive footwork. I think he's the guy. I'm avoiding the tight end room here, though. I'm really kind of avoiding Zeke, too, as far as the upside. I'm totally keeping him in all of my lineups. He's starting, no doubt. But in DFS, I think I'm going to fade just because this is a pretty stout run D. He's going to have to get his value through the air, and there's just a lot of other guys that have mouths to feed in that respect. Billy,
Zach Martin out as well.
I don't think it affects it as much as so I think they're going to be passing a bunch anyways, and I think Martin is really changes the run game for them. Maybe they try to run if Martin's healthy, but without Martin, I think it doesn't change that much because you have
limiting Zeke on the ground. Right. Limiting Zeke on the ground, definitely going to be a factor in that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at this matchup and I'm just salivating. This is 2 of the more fantasy-friendly offenses in the league that we don't have question marks with. Really, these are experienced quarterbacks and big dog talent. It's exactly what you want to see. Guys in your lineup in this game. So the Cowboys allowed the 2nd most points to wide receivers and the 8th most points to running backs in 2020. And I think that's the big difference in this game is on the defensive side of the ball. Dallas defense, not known for being all that stout. However, they are stacked with talent. The addition of Micah Parsons, I think, is going to be really dynamic for that defense and what they're able to do coverage-wise. But Godwin, I'm in on Godwin all the way. I'm like we just talked about. I'm getting him all over the place in leagues. Taking most of the time 3 rounds. I'm taking running backs, and if not, I'm taking the guy on the other side of the ball in CeeDee Lamb. And I love Amari Cooper as well. I just think CeeDee's in for one of those really, really prime seasons. And I'm not really all that excited to watch the Dallas Cowboys run defense, being that they moved Keanu Neal, former Falcon safety, down, and he will be getting the start at middle linebacker for a team that was already pretty poor against the run. But I'm hoping for a thriller, lots of big dogs in this one that are no-brainer starts, and I'm with Ryan on avoiding the tight end positions on both sides of the ball. Both teams have extremely fast linebackers, and that means that they can hang with and guard some of these tight ends. But I am really eyeballing the Cowboys tight end situation, which guy seems to take the lead. And I'm also eyeballing to see if O.J. Howard seems to be, in that role where he's the tight end 1 and gets the targets we expect a Tom Brady tight end to get. Coming off that Achilles injury, I'd love to see the guy have a good year. I do have a little bit of exposure, but for a start this week, week 1, I'm avoiding these tight ends if you have another option, just because, like I said, that speed on the defense side of the ball, linebacker. But I'm also really curious to see the Fournette-Rojo split. I'm more on the Fournette side of things. I think he's the more talented guy. However, Ronald Jones had 972 yards rushing last year with Fournette cutting into his work share more and more as the year went on. I do think Fournette's a little bit more tuned up, ready to go, and in shape than we saw at the end there kind of in Jacksonville. And we kind of saw his game pick up as the season went on, a little bit of time there with Tampa Bay. And in the Super Bowl, he really looked like kind of the Leonard Fournette we thought. So I love a lot of these guys. I'm hoping Fournette, really kind of takes off. But CeeDee Lamb will be the guy you wish you had on your fantasy team this year, starting tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football for the NFL kickoff.
Scott Davis pointing out how much Scott loves Antonio Brown. Definitely not wrong there. And guys, I think you nailed it as far as the tight end rooms. It scares me looking at these linebackers. Micah Parsons, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch. He's healthy right now. So he's going to be on the field. And then on the other side, Devin White and Levante David. And they brought in KJ Britt as a number 3 inside linebacker. There are some serious linebackers in this game that the tight ends could get eliminated, as good as they might be. So I will say I think I'm nailing the over, but on that spread, I like the Bucs to win, but 8.5 is a lot. Are you guys taking that spread or no?
8.5 feels like a little bit of a trap. Like I think if it was 7.5, I'm Bucs. At 8.5, it makes me feel like you gotta take the points, because even garbage time, the Bucs get a lead and the Cowboys come rolling back and just run out of time. That 8.5 is a real funny number, and I don't like that.
I'm over, and I'm Bucs with 8.5 because Tom Brady does not come out in the fourth quarter and run the ball. They punish people. I don't see the Cowboys stopping the Bucs. I do see the Bucs getting some stops against the Cowboys. So that's just a touchdown and a field goal. I foresee that. I think it's the sealed deal. The Bucs are going to win by 10 plus, even though it could be like 30-45. Like, I could, honest to God, see something like that happening tomorrow. Which, again, look at the scores there. You want in on that?
Absolutely.
Definitely not impossible.
No.
Well, with
I'll
that
set
being
the
said,
over,
I'll say in the over. This is going to be a matchup of two offenses, I think. But you're moving to a game that could be exciting, could be a little bit less exciting. Kind of you have to wait and see on this one. Eagles-Falcons. Falcons have the spread at -3, over under 48 points. Eagles obviously starting Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Miles Sanders in the backfield. They're only carrying three running backs, Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell behind him. Kind of an unusual thing there for that team. Devontae Smith, the new receiver there, new shiny toy. Jalen Reagor, and then Quez Watkins and Greg Ward, the two receivers that are kind of battling for that third spot. And then, of course, Ertz and Goddard starting at tight end. They split time pretty well. The Falcons, though, Matt Ryan, is he past his prime? What's that going to look like? Cordero Patterson and Mike Davis are your running backs, with Javian Hawkins behind him. And then receiver, it's Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage. Those are your top two. But then it's Christian Blake, Olamide Zacchaeus, Frank Darby. Who's it going to be out of them? Who we do know is probably going to get some looks is tight end Kyle Pitts. And, of course, they have Hayden Hurst as well. I got to say, one of my biggest fears, I got to get you guys' take on this with the Eagles, Nick Sirianni saying he doesn't love two tight end formations earlier this preseason. So Ertz and Goddard, what are your thoughts on them? A lot of people are high on both tight ends. Are you in on both? Is there one or the other that you'd prefer to have in redraft?
So I just recently made a trade. This is kind of interesting. This kind of came up the way you brought it up, Tom. I'm trading away George Kittle, right? This guy wants him bad. You guys know how I love Goddard. However, I told him it's going to be Goddard and Ertz, or this deal doesn't happen, because I got to figure this situation out. You understand? In my situation, I'm trading the number one tight end for really a tight end situation. But in my opinion, both guys could be really good in this offense playing their role, though I think both guys will be used the same. I do feel like Goddard takes the lead, and I feel like that's just because if the Eagles were to trade one of these guys, it would obviously be Zach Ertz leaving first. Got to have him healthy if you're going to move him. So I feel like as far as the two tight end stuff goes that you're talking about, one of them would be a pretty damn good slot receiver with Reagor and Devontae Smith, in my opinion, in the red zone too. So I think two tight end sets, you typically think guys at the end of the line, 3-point stance down line. These guys move out to the slot, and they're just as dangerous or worse, actually, than most teams' wide receiving core. And Zach Ertz being one of 3 tight ends playing right now that have ever caught 100 balls in a season.
That's very true. He does get targets. Ryan, what do you think of these tight ends?
Well, Pitts, if you can even call him a tight end, I don't know how long is that going to last until he's wide receiver next year, for real. But yeah, so on this game, I can sum it up pretty nicely. Give me Pitts and Ridley. They're going to get the volume. I have no idea what's going on with Philly this year. It's a big unknown. There's so much talent I love there, but I want to see a week. I'm not touching this otherwise. I love the running back room. Even though I'm not even a big Boston Scott fan, I think Sanders is good, and I think Gainwell's going to take his job one way or the other. So you may be looking at a 1-2 punch a la Chubb and Hunt if Gainwell is what I think he's going to end up turning into. But for the tight ends, I like the tight ends in both of these teams, but not, except for Pitts, not today. because, like you said, the Ertz and the Goddard week 1, what is going on? If they don't run 2 tight end sets, if they run 2 tight end sets, and it doesn't matter. You can feel comfortable starting either, because then it's just luck of the draw touchdown. Really, is what it's going to come down to, I think. But with Pitts playing wide receiver and then Ridley, I'm there. I'm all about those 2 guys. You could even make the argument about Matt Ryan, but I do think Philly's defense could be. Well, again, there's so much about Philly I don't know, so I'm avoiding this game a little bit more than most this week. As far as the spread, I'm not going to touch this game. I'm not going to touch this game in the betting books. I would say that I just don't think Hurts has got what's going on. Even though the line is going to be healthy, I'm going to lean the Falcons, even though I don't think the Falcons are good. And I think the Eagles, if they play them 6 weeks from now, would probably beat them. But I have nothing as far as – and I'll take the under, too, even though I do think there's going to be some passing yardage for the Falcons.
So I'm all in on the Eagles in this game, and it really just kind of goes back to Nick Sirianni being in that Eagles locker room. It's not quite the new head coach situation like the Falcons are under with Arthur Smith. But I'll take the Eagles -3, and I'm going to go under as well, because I don't see the Eagles necessarily going down there and lighting the scoreboard on fire. And I think the Falcons are going to be an absolute mess on offense, because the philosophy that Arthur Smith is showing up with down there does not match with the personnel that they have at all, at any position, including the most important one in running back with Mike Davis. So 2 rookie head coaches facing off week 1. I'm slightly concerned about that situation in Atlanta. And like I said, Mike Davis, okay, so your second option is Cordero Patterson. If Cordero Patterson is legitimately how the Falcons plan on running the ball at the volume we're expecting Arthur Smith to bring to Atlanta, something like we saw in Tennessee, then I just cannot buy that situation. Gallman could be a factor in time. We've seen him be a fairly good waiver wire option at times in his career, and I feel like definitely more of an actual running back than Cordero Patterson. As far as those guys go, I've avoided Mike Davis and really all the Falcons, to be honest. But where you drafted Mike Davis, you're likely starting him this week, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't on volume alone. I like Jalen Hurts. I'm definitely starting him if I have him. The guy just churns out points, even when he's not even particularly playing well, and that's perfect for our situation here. Maybe not for Tom as an Eagles fan. However, we'll take points however we can get them, guys. And I like Jalen Hurts a lot, Miles Sanders, and both tight ends, Goddard and Hurts, that we talked about a moment ago. However, with Reagor and Devontae Smith, I want to see it first. Reagor, a guy I was really high on coming out of TCU, a personal favorite of mine, really kind of let us down last year, let me down especially, less than 400 yards receiving. I definitely had higher expectations for him than that, and I do think his potential is much higher than that, and he needs a little help, and Devontae Smith is supposed to be it. Need both of those guys healthy. Reagor was hurt last year, some injury stuff early with Devontae Smith, so hopefully those guys will both be 100% good to go. I want to see how that shakes out before I'm starting either of them in my lineups, but obvious guys in Atlanta, Ridley, Mike Davis, and Pitts, and Matt Ryan should not be your quarterback 1. If he is, you're starting him. Not a terrible matchup, just not a good situation.
Hey, I can't disagree there. I will say with the Eagles, I wouldn't want any of those receivers on my team just due to injury concerns and questions about what's the offense going to look like. I do like Miles Sanders. I like Gainwell long term. Hurts, I understand the floor. I don't know that it's there long term. I don't know that he makes it through the season. If he continues playing at the level he did last year, it'd be tough to justify playing a full season. So we've talked about that at death. But
being our resident Eagles fan, while we're here, I want to ask you about our boy Gardner Minshew coming to Philly. And for our dynasty players, hey, I have Gardner Minshew everywhere that I have Jalen Hurts, some by accident and some because I made sure I went and got him where I have Jalen Hurts and I have a good amount of Hurts. How do you think this situation plays out long term? I guess to me, it's hard to believe the Eagles went and got our boy Minshew to sit again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, tough to say. I mean, it's just to make it quick, I would say if Hurts really struggles, they'd put in Minshew. I think he goes in before Flacco, but I don't think that they're rushing to put Minshew on the bench. I would love to have Minshew out there. I do think he's the best quarterback in the city. I don't think that's going to let them start him. Unfortunately, I do have him in some dynasty leagues. I will say that, but tough to tough not to love Minshew.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with that being said, I will take the Falcons on the spread, and I'll take the under. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I don't like the Eagles to win this, and I don't think it's going to be overly high-scoring. I think the Eagles' defense is better than the offense. I'll put it that way. But moving on to a little bit more exciting game, at least one quarterback who could be an MVP candidate. Steelers at Bills. 6.5-point spread to the Bills, over under 48.5. I mean, we're talking about Josh Allen, of course, right? What I think could be an MVP candidate at least. Running back room a little questionable. Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, and then receivers. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is a stud. Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, and Isaiah McKenzie. I do like those two. And Dawson Knox, a solid option at tight end that we've been at least hoping was going to make a bit of a breakout. The Steelers, one that we think should have an offensive rookie of the year, and Najee Harris back in the backfield. Nobody really great behind him. Ben Roethlisberger throwing the ball. Is he fully healthy? Can he make it through a season? Juju, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Ray McLeod, James Washington, Pat Freiermuth, Eric Ebron, a number of targets for him to go to. So what's this game look like? Who are the Steelers giving the ball to? Are the Bills going to have anybody past Stephon Diggs that can really step up into a number 2 receiver or a solid running back role? I feel like there's a lot of questions with these teams, right? Ryan, what do you think?
So looking at this is going to be, first and foremost, I'll take the Bills and I'll take the over. For this, I think Josh Allen is matchup proof. I'm not sure I'm DFSing him this week, but I want all of this game with the Bills. So give me, obviously you're never sitting Allen. I don't think we need to keep saying that, but that goes without saying. Same with Diggs, but he should be, I don't care who's matching up with them. Their strength, the Steelers, are good at like rushing the passer and trying to stop the run. The Bills don't need to do that. They don't need to run. They can launch it. And good luck rushing Josh Allen. More often than not, it hurts you. So, the Steelers D, we know it's a great defense, but this offense is better. I do love Najee. I do have concerns about the Steelers' offensive line, but he's a good receiver. And then playing receiver roulette with all these guys all year with Claypool, Deontay, Juju, which one's the wide receiver one each week is going to be a pain in the butt. If you got exposure to these guys, I think it's going to be a boom or bust option for all three of them. I'm going to lean Claypool for his red zone potential. One of the most interesting things for me, though, is to see the snap percentage of Pat F week 1. If he gets over 50%, I think it pushes him right up into the top 12 conversation. I mean, we've talked about his talent, but if he gets the majority of the snaps from week 1 moving forward, which I think is a total possibility, we got to be jacking him up into the rankings because this guy's talent with this offense and his run blocking ability and the defensive attention the receivers get, he should flourish this year as a rookie, which is very odd for tight ends, but I can see it happening.
Yeah, I'm actually in on the Steelers in this one. 6.5 at Buffalo seems like a funny number. 48.5. I'm gonna go just slightly under. I don't think this game will have as much fireworks as you might assume on the surface. But hey, Big Ben's last ride. I know the Bills had a lot of success last year, but the Steelers are the perfect team to rattle a young, growing team that's on this path of the Bills. I mean, they're really setting their sights on AFC title. They're looking at the Chiefs. You know, that's kind of the expectation coming into this year. And with the young cast and trying to mix and match a couple pieces, I could see things not being quite as smooth. Relatively one-dimensional offense in Buffalo. It's really Josh Allen. That's the offense. Versus a top-tier defense in Pittsburgh that luckily T.J. Watt showed back up to practice today. So looks like he'll be good to go this weekend. But that was a concern that I had as well. Hey, no T.J. Watt. This is a very different defense. And hey, Scott, thanks, man. Appreciate you. But I just think that one-dimensional situation, defense is usually ahead of offenses out the gate, right? And this is not a fun defense to have to go against. And a team that I feel like the Steelers are coming in this year. They're quiet. You don't hear a whole lot coming out of Pittsburgh. Big Ben looks to be in better shape, and they've got that new shiny toy, Najee Harris. So I don't know. Defense is typically ahead of the offense, like I said, but there is no tape on what the Steelers' offense is going to look like with Najee Harris. But the glimpse or two that we saw, I liked quite a bit. It prompted me to take him in the second round. And I think they'll be much improved. The Bills have Stephon Diggs and pretty much a crowded wide receiver room that doesn't get you too excited after that. I'm looking really closely at who, if anyone, really emerges as that wide receiver too. Last year was kind of matchup-based situation, who was healthy, who was not. So I'm really looking for that second option in that Buffalo offense outside of Diggs, and whoever that is likely to be, a pretty high waiver priority in your leagues as well. But also Singletary or Moss, is one of them going to separate themselves and give us that running back asset we've been longing for in the Buffalo offense? And just the more and more I look at these guys, the more and more regression in Buffalo seems a little bit more likely as we get closer and closer to kickoff. I like them. I like a lot of their players. I just feel like last year was just boom, really quick. It's going to be really hard to sustain.
The two guys that I would mention that I think, Billy, are Gabe Davis. I think he's the clear 2 when this is all said and
love
done.
me some Gabe Davis.
And then Dawson Knox, even though perhaps not this week as much, Dawson Knox is going to be a guy that I'm interested in moving forward because, in a lot of the same reasons for Pat F., there's so many weapons around him. The weapon of Josh Allen is really what I'm concerned with because they're likely having a spy on him. So I think Knox and Davis, maybe not this week, but those are the guys I'm excited about in this offense moving forward, outside the normals.
I got to point out for Pat F., it's going to be the blocking that helps him. That's what's going to get him the touches. Ebron's more of a receiver. We know that. Pat F's going to be on the field because he can block, and he can trick people into thinking he's going to be blocking. And then he's out on a route. He's athletic enough to make a move and get separation. So big fan of him. Baby Gronk. I love it. That is the true tight end I love in this draft.
Eric Ebron to me is kind of like the offensive side of the ball, Jadeveon Clowney. Athletically, completely ridiculous. Just an enormously talented guy, but it does not translate to the field in the way you'd think. I see no reason to not be favoring Pat Freiermuth right now. Actually, we saw him link up with Big Ben real quick twice in a game. Obviously, they've been working on that a little bit. So I like Pat F a ton everywhere, especially as a tight end too in home league. Scoop him up.
Absolutely. Well, moving to another team that had a little bit of a tight end kind of switcheroo, some injury, brought somebody else in, the Vikings. -3 over the Bengals, over-under of 57.5. So the Vikings, you bring in Christopher Herndon from the Jets, somebody that has a lot of athleticism but didn't really show up on that team. Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball. Obviously, Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison behind him. And then the receiver room, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Amir Merced Smith, somebody that we've talked about a little bit coming out of the draft, KJ Osborne, D.D. Westbrook. It's an interesting offense, right? Efficient, I think, is the best way to put it with Kirk Cousins, one of my favorite words. And then going up against Joe Burrow, the guy that was supposed to be Rookie of the Year last year, injured, obviously, because they have no offensive line, and they didn't improve that. But they brought in Jamar Chase. So now you have Chase, Boyd, Higgins, Tate, as well as Joe Mixon in the backfield and a room full of garbage for tight end. I mean, can Joe Burrow realistically win games, and can they produce significant fantasy points this week and onwards with no offensive line still?
I think so. I'm going to take the Vikings in this game, but I'm way, way over that 47.5. I know this offensive line is not good, but the one way to alleviate an offensive line is get more people you can throw to very quickly. And Jamar Chase is a big, strong kid. He's going to be fine getting off press coverage for some of those hot routes that Burrow's going to have to throw when they can't pick up blitzers. But in my opinion, just this matchup alone is a little bit more intriguing than we think. This could be a really fun game. I think Dalvin Cook is going to get out to a big head start on his 2,000-yard season that he's about to put up. I'm starting Cousins in this matchup as well. For those of you that are like me and wait way too long on a quarterback, Kirk Cousins last year's quarterback 12, absolute steal in fantasy drafts this year. There's been virtually no change to the weapons around him except for Justin Jefferson got one more year better. So I'm liking that. I do think they need to find a third option behind Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen long term. We've seen age starting to catch up with Adam Thielen just a little bit last year, kind of had himself a year similar to our boy in Seattle that I can't stand because the inconsistency and his numbers last year, Adam Thielen, were very not Adam Thielen as far as the consistency goes. So I do think they got to figure something out there, but there won't be many targets not intended for those big names in Minnesota. And the Bengals are a favorite fantasy offense of mine. I'm all in on Burrow. He averaged 40 pass attempts a game last year in the 10 games that he played before he went down injured. And T. Higgins is my wide receiver 14. I just love these guys. Tyler Boyd. I know Ryan has Tyler Boyd projected for a monster year, and there's no reason to believe that he's not in for a pretty good year, maybe his best of his career, because, hey, at this point, he's back to technically the wide receiver 3 if you follow the hype anywhere. And this is a damn good wide receiver, you guys. So if he's the wide receiver 3, so a lot of teams' third corners are in for long, long days guarding Tyler Boyd. Joe Mixon, he's also a must start. I don't have a ton of Jamar Chase on my teams, just where he was going in my infatuation with T. Higgins. But I'm likely starting him too if I took him where you had to scoop him up in your drafts. But give me the Vikings and the over and a big fantasy day for the Bengals.
Vikings and over as well. It's Dalvin Cook day. I agree. It's the whole Vikings offense day. I love Cousins in this matchup. JJ, Thielen, all systems go for all the stars, but it's Cook. And then for Herndon, I'm not big on him. I was kind of excited this year because the shadow of Adam Gase was gone, but the new regime cut him. Basically, that's kind of what they did if you really look at it. Tyler Kroft was outperforming him in camp. So I think if you have Herndon, wait for that big week, move him, because I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. The talent has been there. It just doesn't work. But for the Bengals, I think they're going to have to throw a lot to keep up. The line is trash, but Burrow is healthy right now, so all 3 receivers are viable. I'm just going to avoid Mixon for the sole reason that I think they're going to have to launch it a bunch. And again, for the same reason, it's not that Mixon's a liability in the pass game. He's good at it. But when you got those 3 receivers, I don't understand why that many touches would go to Mixon when you have the other 3 guys that are going to be more effective through the air. I would play Burrow in DFS this week because the volume that he showed us that he was capable of as a rookie, and then you just added another receiver. I know it's the same line, but he was doing that with that line last year. And it's not exactly the same. They got some guys from free agency and stuff, but nothing. I don't see it very changed. I see still the volume being there. I don't know that they're going to be effective running the ball, and Burrow is going to have a huge week. But the Vikings are
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to think that the Bengals are really going to win this game, right? The Vikings are definitely the better team, I think. Easy to say. And Bill, you nailed it with Kirk Cousins. His efficiency is crazy. I love where I can pick him up. Kind of that, like you said, what was it, quarterback 12, you said, correct? I mean, that's a steal for a guy that he doesn't throw a lot of picks. He throws a ton of yards, and he puts up some points. He puts up touchdowns. But another team with a bit of a question mark at quarterback. We know who it's going to be week 1, but we don't know week 2. The 49ers. Spread of 7.5 at the Lions, over under 45 points. Obviously, a lot of quarterback changes here. Jimmy Garoppolo's starting for the Niners, but how long until Trey Lance is in? Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell at running back, Kyle Juszczyk. I got to bring up the name. Respect to the best fullback in the game. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Mohamed Sanu went there to the 49ers in the receiver room. And then George Kittle, arguably the best tight end in the game. Depends on who you ask, right? And then going up against the Lions. So you bring in, you send out Matt Stafford and you bring in Jared Goff. DeAndre Swift in the backfield with with Jamar Jefferson, Jamal Williams, and then the receiver room kind of a mess. Khalif Raymond, Tyrell Williams, Quintez Cephas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, whose brother just got cut. And then, again, a good tight end in TJ Hawkinson. I love both tight ends. I don't know about you guys. Those are the ones that I will start no matter what. Otherwise, I got some questions.
Hey, all I'm saying is we got Iowa boys galore here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm not touching the Lions. Way, way too scary to do that week 1.
Even
outside Hawk has
Okay.
standalone value, I think. Also, Tyrell Williams in like a tournament play might be worthy. I'm not sure what the 49ers secondary is going to look like, but he's clearly their wide receiver one. As soon as they cut Perriman, he went way up my boards. I'm not going to have any Goff or running back exposure in any format. Obviously, if I have Swift, I'm starting him, but not in any DFS. The 49ers, I want to see Deebo Samuel healthy. I kind of want to see the pecking order there because there's a lot of disagreement on Ayuk and Samuel. I think it's going to be Samuel while they're both healthy, but you got to be concerned with the way that he plays. But week one, I'm not concerned, so I'm all about him. I think Ayuk is a worthy play too, but I'm not touching the run game week one with Mostert being healthy, and I think he could take a big chunk of the workload week one. That's going to be Sermon's job, but maybe not week one. And then again, Kittle, the chalky play. Obviously, you're starting him in DFS. I think he's a little too chalky. This is a really plus matchup, and I don't know that they're going to have to throw the ball that much.
Yeah, I'm way in on the 49ers, and I'm going to take the over because I think the Niners will score a healthy amount of these 45 points to get us there. I don't really have any Lions this year. I literally have no DeAndre Swift. If I did, I traded him away for another running back, likely somebody I valued a little bit higher. The receivers, I like Tyrell Williams. I have him and Goff in some dynasty places or depth plays, deep league type of thing. But I'm just not that excited about the Lions. Hawkinson's really the only marquee talent piece. And even being tight end 5, I did a little looking at the tight end scoring from last year. So from tight end 1 and 2 to tight end 3 was exactly 100 fantasy points. So a steep drop-off even for that 3rd, 4th, and 5th overall tight end from those other guys. So really not a guy that I get a lot of because Hawkinson goes right on the heels of Kittle, Waller, and Kelsey and Mark Andrews, and those guys are just going a little bit higher than I'm targeting. But on the offense side of the ball for the Niners, I'm with you, Ryan. Like it is a coin flip to me right now. I like Deebo Samuel more than Ayuk, but my brain's kind of telling me like, man, this Ayuk kid's pretty damn good too. So I feel like they do have 2 monster receivers, and then probably the premier monster at tight end in George Kittle right now. So I'm kind of concerned. This is a system that runs the ball a strong majority of the time, and everything's kind of predicated of play action. I'm really kind of concerned with, is there enough work for all 3 of these guys to return the value that they currently hold? Kittle being kind of the main concern because really the one season we saw him have that monster year. The leading wide receiver besides him had less than 500 yards receiving. So, I don't know, a bit of an outlier if you look at it at his career. So there is some concern for me with the Niners, but the only guy that I really want to talk about in this matchup is Trey Sermon. I'm with your concern week one that Raheem Mostert, or I call him Raheem Nostert, will bite into some of that play. However, I don't think it's for very long, and I expect with the lead that they're going to have that Trey Sermon will get some late garbage time work, and I can't wait to see it. He's my running back 17, and I told you guys in our pre-draft rookie coverage talking about running backs that if he ended up in San Francisco, the party was over in the NFC West. I'm sticking by it. I think this guy is an incredible fit for this offense. Just the way he moves, the way he does things. And he's also 10 pounds lighter than he was at Ohio State, which is another one of those things that makes him a little bit more, he's a little bit more thin guy to get outside on some of those, slant running plays that they run off that play action. So go get Trey Sermon right now, unless I'm in your league where he's not available or Ryan already traded him to me. You're going to want him sooner than later, in my opinion.
I will say I do like Sermon a lot, and I think you're right with garbage time, right? This is a player that, with Raheem Mostert being, as of now, the starting running back, right? With his injury history, you're not going to want Mostert out there in garbage time, right? He's the guy that's getting the ball early in the game, and that's what gives him his value. But I think that he's capped because they don't want to risk him getting hurt. I think that's where Sermon comes into his own and eventually takes over. So I'm right there with you. Yeah.
And Mostert really isn't built to handle a huge workload, guys. He was never going to be a 250 carry guy, period.
Absolutely.
He needs Trey Sermon, and honestly, Sermon may need a little bit of Mostert to stay healthy as well. He has injury concerns.
Change the pace.
Too. Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Raheem Mostert will change somebody's pace because that man is fast.
Yes.
But talking about people that are fast, we're going to talk about QB1 real quick.
Josh
Ryan
Allen?
Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. I'm screwing with you. Obviously not QB1. Cardinals at Titans, spread of -3 to the Titans, over under 52 points. All right, so the Titans offense, obviously Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, a monster of a back, who, by the way, is the same size as Patrick Mahomes. Height and weight is almost identical. Terrifying.
Von Miller
to think
too.
about.
Wow.
Yeah, terrifying to think that those are three humans that are the same size.
Yeah.
Receivers brought in Julio Brown, obviously Ryan's guy, AJB. AJ Brown, you can't forget about him. And then they brought in Josh Reynolds as well. And then at tight end, Jeff Swaim and Anthony Fursker are going to be your top two. The Cardinals, on the other hand, obviously Kyler Murray, K1, probably better off playing baseball than football, but I digress. Chase Edmonds, your starting running back as of now. James Conner right behind him. I do want to bring up Eno Benjamin. He's down on the depth chart. I do like him if people were to get hurt. Had to bring that name up. And then receivers brought in AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, obviously here, Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, Rondale Moore, and then the tight end room, less exciting with Max Williams. So a lot of weapons, kind of on both sides of the ball, really. So at the end of the day, who's coming out on top? Who's getting the points? I mean, AJ Brown, Julio, is this Julio season, or is he there just to kind of take some heat off of AJB? What do we think?
So I'm in on the Titans in this matchup. I know the Cardinals seem like a no-brainer team, but we're talking real football. Who's the better team? And I don't think the Cardinals are going to have any kind of answer for Derrick Henry. And that's not even going to need to engage A.J. Brown and Julio Jones duo. So I feel like the Titans might run away with this one relatively easily. I really love it at 3 points. I feel like this is kind of my lock of the week, especially being at Tennessee. 52 points, that's a funny one for me. I'm not really sure where I lay. I guess I would tend to go over with the firepower. But the way I'm kind of feeling this game might go, I think I'm going to stay with the under, coincidentally. But the Titans hosting the Cardinals is a really fun week one matchup. Tons of firepower, lots of big names that you drafted in your fantasy matchups. And I expect the Titans to take to the air a significant amount more this year. And Julio and AJB are both guys you can't wait to start, right? I do think AJB is going to be that lead guy. I just see no way around it. I think Julio was kind of brought in to do what Julio wanted to do, and that's, go deep and catch long touchdowns, kind of make up for all the ones he did not get playing with Matt Ryan. So I think AJB is the type of guy that could have like 110, 115 catches without really pushing, because as soon as you double him, it's a Julio touchdown. So do you want AJB to catch 8 balls down the field, or do you want to let Julio hang a 60-yarder on you guys? I really feel like that's what you're looking at here. Coming off that play action where you have to stack the box against Derrick Henry. I mean, this guy's had 3,500 yards in 2 seasons. You got to prioritize him. But the Cardinals are extremely top-heavy with Kyler under center and Nuke Hopkins at wide receiver. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot that you're excited about. How does this backfield play out? And is there anything left in the tank for A.J. Green? A lot of question marks for me on the Cardinals, and I think I know what I'm getting out of the Titans. And like you mentioned, Josh Reynolds at that wide receiver 3 spot. It's been a big thing all offseason for fantasy owners, trying to figure out who that guy is going to be. I really don't care, because I don't think it matters. This team doesn't throw that much. Even though I expect them to throw more than we've seen, the volume's not going to be there for Julio, A.J. Brown, Ferkser, and then some, my opinion.
Yeah, this is my fantasy game of the week. I am stoked about this game. What a great week one matchup. 2 offenses that are going to be very difficult to deal with, but I can't foresee any way anybody is going to be able to stop Tennessee this year. Just when you're looking at the 3-headed monster at the skill positions, like, holy Jesus. So I'm getting as much as I can of both Tannehill and Kyler, AJB, Henry, Hopkins, and then I'm going to sprinkle some Julio in there too, because I just think, what in the world are they going to do? Julio's going to get his too. Ferkser is probably going to be viable too, because my God, are they going to try to double both of those guys? That being said, I don't see him as a top tight end option, but it would not shock me to see him catch a touchdown. These are 2 fantasy powerhouses. There's some questions about the defense overall. I think they both feel like they've improved, but they're about to get tested by fire this week with each other. I want as much exposure as I can. Also, we're going to get to witness the wide receiver 1 at work. A.J. Brown is going to dominate. The last question I would have, like you said, is AJ Green back? The reports have been positive, so let's see if he can bring some of that. Because I like to remind myself, he and Julio were drafted in the same year, so like, yeah, AJ Green's had some injury history, so is Julio, but we saw what AJ Green could be, and he's not that old yet. I just don't know if he's still the same guy.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'll tell you what. Over the last
take the
6
over.
seasons now, there you go. I do like the over here. I gotta say about
one last thing about Frickser. He can have a very Robert Tonyan year this year, where it's very touchdown heavy. Maybe
Yep.
not really all that many catches.
Yep.
and
Could
hang
just
on
wind up
real
as a
quick.
top.
We've talked about tight ends and how easy it is to bust into the top 12, let alone the top 6. It doesn't take that much. A few touchdowns and you're there pretty much. It's pretty crazy what the drop off is. But I gotta say, with Julio over the last 6 seasons, right? We've talked about this going into last year. He went 8 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, and going into last season, I called it, and I get he had injuries, but 3 touchdowns. If that holds true, that means 8 touchdowns this year.
Double it.
That's big. That'd be big. I don't think that'll necessarily happen. I think that we're going to break free of that 6-year span. I wouldn't call it impossible, though. With AJB opposite him, this is a monster of a team.
I have him at 9.
You get 9.
Yeah, I have him at 9.
I think double
I'd put him at 8
digits
before I put him at 9.
Yeah. I think extra game. Maybe we get one really big day and
That's
get
true.
double digits done. 1-3 touchdown day.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see what he looks like in a different offense. I think that's going to be the biggest factor. And I will say, week
Very
1,
true.
it's one of those things where I don't know what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say I like the over on this one. I think it's a high-scoring game. I think you nailed that. And I do like the Titans a little bit better than the Cardinals. I think that offense is a little bit better. Cardinals have real young linebackers that aren't really linebackers, and I think they need to figure that out a little bit.
Yeah.
So Zaven Collins playing the inside is weird to me, and Isaiah Simmons still raw at the NFL level, it seems.
Yeah.
But moving to a team, or 2 teams really, that are a lot less raw, a lot more experienced, but still young on one of these sides, the Seahawks and the Colts. Seahawks have the spread by 2.5, over under of 50 points. This is an interesting one. Seahawks obviously led by Russell Wilson. The backfield is a bit interesting, right? Chris Carson there, but then you have to talk about the 4 guys behind him: Rashad Penny, Alex Collins, DJ Dallas, Travis Horner, because they've had injury issues over the last year or 2 that they've all gotten touches. The receiver room, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, one of the best 1-2 punches in the league. Dwayne Eskridge, Ryan, I think you're on the same page as me with him. And then tight end, bring in Gerald Everett. Obviously, still has Will Dissly as well. A lot of weapons. And then the Colts, you bring in Carson Wentz. Will he start? It's a little bit questionable, but personally, it sounds to me like he is going to be playing week 1. But if he doesn't, it's Jacob Eason, obviously going to be a big factor in this. JTT, Jonathan Taylor behind him, though. Jordan Wilkins, by the way, running back 2 for him, ahead of Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines. A little bit of an interesting one there. And then the receiver room, Michael Pittman, Zach Pascal, Michael Strachan as the wide receiver 3, and then Paris Campbell. Your boy T.Y. Hilton is out this week. And then Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox at tight end. So some interesting ones. The Colts obviously a bit injury dependent. Who's going to be playing, who isn't. The Seahawks are healthy. I think that's kind of where the spread is leaning, right? It seems like 2.5-point spread is because Carson might not play. You're missing T.Y. Seems like that would kind of make the difference. But that's a good defense in Indy, am I right? Like, what's this really going to look like for these 2 teams?
Well, when I look at it, despite the Colts' defensive prowess, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I'll take the over. I'm more torn on which team ends up taking the win. I'm just going to lean Wilson, but I'd love to see this game again later on in the season when everything's clicking all the way for the Colts. Wentz being healthy and playing would be huge for Indy. They're going to try to run the ball down the Seahawks' throats in the beginning. So Taylor is a huge play this week. The Seahawks defense is not impressive. But the Seattle offense, you got basically all the key pieces coming back. They've all got rapport. It's Russell Wilson. Metcalf is the real problem. Plus, you have Carson, the continuously underrated yet effective ground game that Seattle can run through Carson. This offense is difficult to deal with. I expect a slower start to this game, but this is going to score a lot of points as the game wears on. And Seattle's going to score. To keep up, the Colts are going to start throwing Wentz. I think this is a Pittman breakout game. I love Pascal as like a streaming option or a DFS play and like a tournament DFS. I think it's really interesting. The thing is, the Colts will not ever abandon the run, so I think Taylor is going to be safe week after week after week. But for this one, this is going to be a high-scoring game. Taylor's going to be involved. All the offensive players here, even though the Colts defense is so salty, this is kind of a defensive-proof unit, especially it does seem Wilson is so much hotter early on in the year, and then he cools off. So I could expect a nuke from Wilson this week, which would give them the edge.
Yeah, I'm not real excited about this matchup for my Colts out the gate. If I'm betting with my wallet, I'm going to take Seattle -2.5. Even if Carson Wentz is under center, there's still question marks on if they're have everything smoothed out the way they would like to, full systems go for the regular season. I understand the urgency to get him on the field. However, he has missed some, pretty significant time. Not the amount of time. It's just that preseason. These are the tweaks. These are the corrections. And they're going to have to do that, when games actually matter. So the Seahawks are tough out anytime. We're still in limbo with the Colts getting offense. I did like what I saw out of Eason and Ellinger, actually, with Ellinger being injured. Eason would be under center. It's not a deal breaker for me. I thought he played pretty good football. Not that he's Carson Wentz, but I feel like, hey, this team is predicated on a running game and defense, and Jacob Eason can facilitate a ball game enough to get a win if they were in position, I feel like. It being left on his shoulders, probably not an ideal situation for the Colts, especially with the depth at wide receiver. I love me some Michael Pittman, but I'm with Scott Davis this week. If you're starting him, temper expectations. Maybe look for someone on your bench with a slightly better upside as far as their matchup goes. But Seattle was extremely poor against the passing game in 2020, historically bad. They did turn it around the back half of the season, but still ended up with the 8th most points allowed to wide receivers. So I do feel like there is a decent chance that Michael Pittman has that coming out party you mentioned there, Ryan. I do expect some improvement with what we saw down the stretch with the Seahawks kind of continuing. They had to get that fixed as bad as it was, and I'm sure they spent a good portion of their offseason paying attention to it. But I'm tempering Pittman, like I said. Personally, however, I do see the potential, Ryan, and I'm always starting Russell Wilson. And where I have Carson Wentz, the Colts fan in me can't help it. I'm plugging him in, hoping that the magic from Frank Reich carries over. However, I'm not that confident in it, and I'm going to take the under on the over/under on 50 in this game. I think it's going to be an ugly, kind of that old school, Colts and Ravens like 19-16 game. Even though there is some firepower, Week 1, I don't know. I don't see the Seahawks coming out blazing. And I think the Colts will have some things to iron out after Week 1.
I'm going to give you guys 2 secrets. Number 1, this isn't even plugged in this week. Number 2, Carson Wentz is going to be a top 5 quarterback this season.
I don't think that's the craziest thing you've ever said, Tom. I don't think that's the craziest thing you've ever said, for sure.
It's not even definitely on the list of the craziest things.
I know. I said much crazier. But
consistently much crazier.
But this is one of the things I am so confident in. This team is so good. The offensive line is phenomenal, right? He has the protection. He has a great running back behind him. He has receiver options. Yes, they need to break out a little bit, but I think his receivers are better than they were in Philly at any given time. His tight ends are, yes, a level down, but Mo Alley-Cox and Jack Doyle, not the worst options you could have at tight end. I think it provides a great system for Carson Wentz with Frank Reich. And I think that we see the Colts be a serious contender this year. With that being said, I love Pittman. I love Wentz. I love JTT. I'm in on all of them. And I do like Zach Pascal. Ryan, you brought him up, I believe. And I love Zach Pascal. even Paris Campbell, I think, could have a solid year if Ty misses some significant time. I think those will be your three at the end of the day. The Seahawks, we know who to play. It's the same guys as always. It's DK, Lockett, Russell, and personally, I'll say this. I don't like any of the Seahawks running backs just because I don't know how many games they're going to be in on. I love the strict ability. And if it's a DFS play, I love whoever the starter is, any of them. But otherwise, I'm out. That's where I'm at.
About Chris Carson.
So
I
love Chris Carson.
I have no.
I love Chris Carson. Yeah, I might have
I get
one
that, Billy.
share.
Yeah.
It's
not
enough
that
to
it's not
justify.
that I dislike him. I'm just I've seen him play really well. He's beat me a handful of times in games that mattered. Just when I just think back to all those injuries and the guys that I'm
Risk reward.
there. Yeah, exactly. I'm about minimizing that risk, especially in those top 3 rounds. Chris Carson's a gamble for me. Not the talent, but how many games he's going to be on the field for.
This is obviously a bit of an exaggerated example, but I will take a running back 5 over a running back 3. If that running back 5, I have no concerns that he's going to miss time. He's going to be consistent week in and week out.
You know what you have there. That's very important.
So even though he missed 2 games 2 years ago, 1 game last year, and 4 games last year, 1 the year before, 2 the year before that, he has had 9 touchdowns 3 years in a row.
That's good.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild.
The problem to me, Ryan, I don't want 20 points in 3 games. And
I dropped enough running backs. I'll take him when I can have him, and I'll put somebody else in after.
And it's going to be about how you draft. Yeah, it's about how you draft, right? I want 15 points every game.
Yep.
Right? I don't want 10 most games and 23 games.
And
that's going to be about personality.
I want to play musical chairs with my receivers, not my running backs.
Receivers are so deep.
Exactly.
They're so deep.
You get your main guy. You start him every week. If you start 2 more,
yes,
it's easy to pick the 2 off your lineup that have the best matchup. It's very hard to find a running back that's going to get 12 touches in the middle of the year. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Guys, I just one more thing to add. This time tomorrow we'll be watching real football.
Real football.
I can't wait. I'll be half asleep, but I can't wait.
At this time tomorrow, Pinto's going to have 175 messages to catch up on about the Bucks and Cowboys.
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, boys, we're gonna move it to another game here.
I like this one.
I do like this one specifically for one side. The spread is even. I love that. Over under 44.5. It is Chargers at Washington football team. So Justin Herbert with the Chargers leading the way. A little bit of a concern. Austin Eckler did not practice today. So that is a question mark. But Justin Jackson, Joshua Kelly, Larry Roundtree, going to bring them up with Austin Eckler. We don't know what the status is. Tight end, Jared Cook, what is he, 36, 35, 36? With Donald Parham. This is still good, but he's 36. And then receivers, it's Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jalen Guyton, KJ Hill, Josh Palmer. It's a steep drop-off, right? We can agree that receiver room, it is a steep drop-off from number 2 to number 3.
It's a deep wide receiver room of guys that used to be good and stuff.
Was KJ Hill a quarterback or a receiver at Ohio State?
He was a receiver at Ohio State, and he was pretty damn good, actually.
All right. I couldn't remember.
At the combine, and that's just not going to get it done at the next level.
Yeah. But looking at the other side, Ryan Fitzmagic leading the WFT, WTF, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick in the backfield, Terry McLaurin, Adam Humphries, Curtis Samuel, who I also saw coming off the field today. A little bit of a question mark there.
I don't believe
I got to bring up. That's what it sounds like. And if he
I don't
doesn't,
think he's playing week 1.
If he doesn't, Diami Brown.
Yes.
Diami Brown. Cam Sims still there. Brown. Yeah. And then Logan Thomas and John Bates, I guess, is their number 2 tight end. But the one thing I want to point out in this game, Diami Brown, if he's their receiver 3 in this game, right? If Curtis Samuel doesn't play, who loses out as the wide receiver 3? Is it Curtis Samuel, Adam Humphries? which one loses snaps when Samuel is back and Diami Brown's balling out? Because I think he will if he gets the play.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm thinking it's going to be a problem for Curtis Samuel's career in Washington.
Wow.
And I like Curtis Samuel. But this is going to be a problem if Diami Brown comes
Oh.
out, just goes off. I think
I'm Diami Brown over Curtis Samuel. I've never been a big Curtis Samuel fan. I always felt like he was just slightly overhyped. And I tell you what, Diami Brown is one hell of a receiver. And he's a little bit bigger than you think too when you go look him up. The guy's going to be something. Reminds me a bit of a guy I'm really fond of, Reggie Wayne. Very similar guy, a little bit smooth, not the biggest, not the fastest, just does a lot of really subtle things right.
Yep.
I like that. So with that being said, though, this game got a lot to like, right?
Yep.
Even
Ryan, you
with
wanna take it away,
the possibility of Eckler out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know about the defense for the Washington team football, but the Chargers offense is something else if everybody's healthy. Now, that obviously the Eckler news is concerning, but if Eckler plays, even if he doesn't, I don't think it makes a humongous difference because Herbert is so good. But Herbert will have taken a step this year. Healthy Eckler, if that's the case. I think Washington tries to limit Keenan Allen. Mike Williams could be in for a couple deep balls because of it. If Eckler does not play, Mike Williams goes up even more for me because, again, I can see Herbert going deeper, and that benefits him. The other side with Samuel likely being out, I mean, I don't think they confirmed it, but they're not optimistic. Diami Brown is super sneaky. McLaurin's always a go. Fitzmagic's probably going to have to throw a bunch to keep up. But if it's close, Gibson is going to carry a really big load here. This is a guy on DraftKings. He is ridiculously cheap, like preposterously cheap. He's an instant automatic for me in every format, tournament or 50-50. You've got to play Gibson. I think he's like 4,900. It is ridiculous. It is embarrassing. DraftKings, you should be embarrassed. If it's not close, though, and Gibson doesn't get the volume, Gibson, well, I'll remind you, played wide receiver in college. So I like Gibson here no matter what. Again, DraftKings, you had better slot in Gibson or you're not going to win.
Yeah, so this game was a Chargers -1. It just moved back to being even Steven on the board. You pick them, as the old school guys like to call it. I'm going to take Washington this one. I liked them at the -1. Hell, I would like them if the Chargers were -3. I really like Washington coming into this year, and they have nothing but a reason to be more and more confident with how they went home in the playoffs. If you can lose in the playoffs and it looked good, they did it. This week, however, will be the first week you're going to be pissed that you drafted Austin Eckler. And I wrote these notes and did all this for you prior to the hamstring popping up last night leading into week 1. Washington's defense is as stout as they come. They allowed the 6th fewest points to running backs in 2020, 3rd fewest to quarterbacks and wide receivers. I'm avoiding the Chargers in this one. In my mind, the only thing they have to stop is Keenan Allen, and if that's all Washington has to worry about, Chase Young takes care of Keenan Allen being able to do a whole lot of damage to you really by himself. No Austin Eckler out of the backfield, really looking to see who that back is that steps up. I like a couple guys in this backfield. Larry Roundtree is a guy that's gotten a lot of talk coming out from that coaching staff, the rookie out of Missouri, and he could be really good in kind of the spread influence that the Chargers have in their offense. But I'm sorry if you drafted Austin Eckler and believe the hype. You'll be very, very, very upset very soon. However, it'll be okay. There's always next year. And I'll tell you who to not take next year, and Austin Eckler will be at the top of the list. However, on the other side of the ball, I really like Terry McLaurin coming into this year 3, I believe, for him. And he's already had 2 pretty damn good years, so a lot of guys high on him. And we were talking about a guy a minute ago, Diami Brown. I think that's the number 2 wide receiver to have in this offense. But I think Curtis Samuel will kind of limit what he's able to do. I think they're going to try to target him with the Ron Rivera connection. They obviously brought him in, wanted to use the guy, and they think a lot of him. So Antonio Gibson is the new apple of my eye this offseason. I love this matchup for him. I think last year they wanted him to focus on playing running back because being a receiver and the workload that he got in the passing game wasn't really impressive. But J.D. McKissick caught 80 balls last year. So I think Antonio Gibson, is probably in for roughly half of that. Just his natural pass-catching ability. Fitzpatrick under center. He's going to sling it. I think Washington's going to be a lot more fun to watch on the offensive side of the ball as this defense keep doing what they're doing. And I got a little bit of question marks about Logan Thomas. Kind of inflated value at the tight end position, in my opinion. Is he able to duplicate that success? And really, most of that success was just high volume in receptions. The yardage wasn't impressive. The touchdowns weren't necessarily impressive. But with the incoming wide receivers, the drafting of Dyami Brown, bringing in Curtis Samuel from Carolina, does that cut into some of that number? Because last year, the number 2 wide receiver was a real crapshoot in Washington. So I'm interested to see how that works out. I am not starting Fitzpatrick until further notice. But if you waited too long and he's your guy, roll with him. This isn't a negative matchup, but this Chargers defense is a little better than people remember with Derwin James and Bosa coming back for these guys. This is a very talented defense that could be one of those defenses if they can keep everybody on the field.
I got to remind you as well, by the way, of Uchenna Nwosu and Kenneth Murray and Nasir Adderley, my boy from Delaware. There's a couple studs on that Chargers defense. But real quick on that situation with the receivers in WTF, did you know that Adam Humphries and Curtis Samuel are the exact same size, height, and weight?
I did not.
Identical. Curtis Samuel runs about 0.2 faster in the 40, though.
Yeah,
To me, if somebody's losing out, it's Adam Humphries.
for sure.
His catch percentage a little bit better, but it's apples and oranges, right? It's tough to compare them, even though they're almost identical in size. I don't know. I do like Dyami, though.
To me, the thing about Dyami, Samuel, and McLaurin is they can all 3 play all 3 positions, and that's really beautiful versatility. You can
And
only
here's the
play
thing.
Humphries in the slot.
Here's the thing, right? Do you see a 4-man rotation on this team?
No, it's going to be a 3. I think Humphries is nothing
You think so?
because of Dyami
Fair
Brown.
enough.
He might be something when Samuel's out, but he's nothing once everybody's
Yeah.
healthy.
That's fair. Well, we're going to move it on to another team. We already talked about him for a second here because it's where Curtis Samuel came from, right? Jets at Panthers, -4.5 to the Panthers, over under 44. This is kind of an interesting one, right? No he who must not be named on the Jets. So obviously Zach Wilson, rookie quarterback. Running back, I'm very disappointed that Michael Carter is listed as running back 4 when he's the best running back on the team. But Tevin Coleman, Michael Perrine, and Ty Johnson ahead of him. Receivers Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, Denzel Mims, Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder currently on COVID-19 list. So a little unfortunate there. But personally, I think it's going to be Elijah Moore getting those touches. And then moving to the Panthers, Sam Darnold comes in from the Jets, playing his old team with CMC and Chuba Hubbard behind him. And then DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, who has looked like the best rookie receiver, if I do say so myself, in preseason, as well as Shi Smith. And then at tight end, Dan Arnold, Ian Thomas listed as the top 2. But the guy, I've talked about him, I think he's going to get touches at some point, maybe not this week, is Tommy Tremble. I can't leave his name out. Every week we talk about the Panthers, I'm bringing up Tommy Tremble. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it. It's not just because both of us are named Tom. But Scott Davis saying, give me Corey Davis and CM. Scott, no shit. What else do we got from this game other than Corey Davis and CM?
So I'm going to take the Panthers -4.5. I think they're going to be a very improved team. That last preseason game with Sam Darnold, he went like 19 to 25. I really liked what I saw there. I mean, it looked like, okay, hey, this kid's grown and maybe not in the bright lights of New York. He's doing just fine. So revenge game for both Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson individually and together now that they're both in Carolina. But I like what's going on in New York with the new regime. Zach Wilson, of course, looking as promising as a guy can before he's taking an NFL stat. But I think it's going to be tough to rely on about anyone on the Jets from a fantasy standpoint on a week-to-week basis, being that there's already confusion in the backfield. They took Michael Carter relatively high in the draft. Tevin Coleman's listed as the starter. Ty Johnson as the backup. And Ty Johnson has kind of be fool's gold before, so I know a lot of people that I've been in conversation with are a little bit jaded on the prospect of him being a worthwhile fantasy play from the running back position. But I just feel like they're going to be hard to trust, the Jets, unless you're in a dynasty situation with Zach Wilson. Probably nobody that you have to have in your starting lineup, every week, a guy that you drafted to be a starter. I am excited for what Coach Rule has done in Carolina as well. Like I said, Darnold just killed it the other day. I really like just the way he looked fluid out there. Looked a little bit different than what I've seen in the past with a guy that looked relatively nervous most of the time. We had the seeing ghost joke. However, it did seem like he was seeing ghosts a lot of the time. But I think he's going to slay his former team. I'm expecting this Panthers offense to be fun. Terrace Marshall in a flex spot. Throw him in and enjoy this game. Sam Darnold does not suck, and Terrace Marshall is going to be a big deal sooner than later.
No Adam Gase, what looks to be the studliest rookie quarterback in the preseason, I would say, personally. Week 1 win for the Jets. I will take the Jets, and I think I'll take the over. Just the only reason I'll take the over here is because the Jets defense is a little banged up. I do like the youth movement they got going on there on both sides of the ball. I'm just not sold on Carolina as a whole, and that has less to do with Darnold or Rule for that matter. I just don't know that their personnel I can't put my finger on it actually 100%. I mean, obviously you're playing the CM, and you're going to be the Anderson and Darnold narrative is going to be something that's obviously worth paying attention to. But, man, I love Zach Wilson, and with the Crowder being banged up, Elijah Moore is going to have a big game. This is not the most exciting game from a fantasy perspective, but there is potential here if you can hit that right guy like that Elijah Moore. I know we were talking about running back. Michael Carter is the best running back in this backfield. Do not get confused on that, even if week 1 doesn't show that. It's his backfield. It's just a matter of time. Also, speaking quickly on tight ends, Tyler Kroft is a cheap stream or a DFS option. I mean, the Panthers aren't exactly a defensive juggernaut. If the Panthers do score on the Jets are going to have to throw the ball a lot. And to me, Tyler Kroft is this really underrated guy that's likely going to have a big game if you don't have a lot of other options at tight end. So for me, cheap on DFS, or if he's your tight end 2 and your number 1 is like an Evan Ingram type guy who's banged up, not sure if we're going to make it, I'm not upset about starting Kroft this week.
I mean, I won't disagree with you there. I will say this, right? I just pointed this out to Scott Davis in the chat. Boom. Both of these quarterbacks on a 12+ team roster, if they're on the waivers, are worth a stash. I think both of these guys have significant upside. They both have solid receiver rooms. We're not dealing with Adam He, who must not be named. Arguably, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is the best rookie quarterback for fantasy this year. Zach Wilson.
I agree with that.
Right? I like Trevor Lawrence long term. I think he's going to be great. Yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be great.
Starting yet.
Exactly. Trey Lance not starting yet.
Fields.
Yes, thank you. Justin Fields not starting yet.
Yeah.
Hey,
this is the guy.
This guy ran for 10 touchdowns last year at BYU. When they get in the red zone, he's sneaky.
There's a lot to like about this. And like we said, this is a team, the Jets, it's good but not great, right? They have a lot of upside. They're probably still going to be playing from behind, so he's going to throw it a lot. He's going to be running it himself a lot, right? And that's where I think eventually Michael Carter comes in as well. Like we said, this is his backfield to win, and I think he will because of his pass-catching ability. We saw it at UNC. They're going to want a back that can get out there, just play backyard football with Zach Wilson, and that's what they're all going to do. It's going to be backyard football because it's such a young team, but I guarantee that's going to put up some points at some point. And I'm not saying you're going to want to start him, but as your bye week or a bad matchup, Zach Wilson's not a bad guy to have, and neither is Sam Darnold. This is a good team around him, and CMC is a monster if he's on the field. But moving on here, a little bit less exciting, but we do have a rookie quarterback to talk about. Jaguars -3 at the Texans, over under 45.5. I'm just going to say it right now. I'm taking the under on this. This is going to be an ugly game. I'm going to start on the Texans side. Deshaun Watson is QB3 this week. So Tyrod Taylor starting, Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay are lead running backs with David Johnson, Rex Burkhead behind them. Brandon Cooks, Chris Conley, Nico Collins, who we've talked about a bit. Do you like him? Anthony Miller, Danny Amendola just signed with the Texans as well. And then tight end, a bit of a weird one. Pharaoh Brown currently listed as their number one tight end. And then Jordan Akins and Brevin Jordan, who I didn't hate coming out of the draft at tight end. And then the Jags, Trevor Lawrence, obviously QB1 in the draft, 101 in the draft. Unfortunately traded away the best quarterback on the team, Gardner Minshew. Luckily, it was to my team. Hopefully he starts. Gardner Minshew, we love you. James Robinson, your starting running back, as they lost Travis Etienne. DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault as your starting receivers. And then Chris Manhertz, James O'Shaughnessy, Jacob Hollister, no Tim Tebow at tight end. Weird situation we got going on here. I'm going to ask, is there anybody in this game that you actually want to start?
Yes. Somebody that I think is...
Other than James Robinson.
No.
Laviska Shenault, I really want to start. And I have him in a couple places way deeper than I should. And I'm struggling. Like, if there's an inkling that Godwin's not 100%, I am plugging Shenault in, and I am excited about it. Brevin Jordan, I think he could take over as that tight end. I'm not sure how exciting this Texans offense is going to be. It's a really weird matchup because I really like Phillip Lindsay. I think he's a talented guy. He's not an RB1. Melvin Ingram, he's had his time, and if you had him in the glory days in New Orleans, you probably have a little bit of an attachment. And David Johnson, a guy that I have that kind of attachment to. I like all three of these guys if they were going to get the load or even split with one of the other two. I just feel like they're all three too talented to not get some run. And I feel like it's just going to cap everybody mixing it up because at the end of the day, how good do we really expect the Texans' run game to be? That's my problem. Brandon Cooks is just one of those guys, and Tyrod Taylor is going to be better than we're going to give him credit for out of the gate. It's just, is Nico Collins that guy? By default, he's a breakout candidate, but it's really more of a depth issue. Is he ready to play? I don't know. I would like to see it. And on the Jacksonville side of the ball, I'm not jumping out of my seat to start Trevor Lawrence. DJ Chark, I'm not liking the vibes just coming into the year. James Robinson, full systems go. Get him in. I love the guy. The ETN situation, extremely unfortunate, but it put everybody that was drafting a little bit earlier this year was getting James Robinson at an insane value. I have him as my RB5 in a couple spots, and I am trying to find a way to plug him in for this week one matchup out of the gate. But, the only guy that I have to start in this matchup is James Washington, and I'm not too excited to start anybody else except for Laviska Shenault because I think the Jags are going to just use the hell out of him. I like how they use him out of the backfield, catching balls. I feel like he is equally as talented as DJ Chark. A little bit more raw coming into the league, but we really saw the guy take strides in development and being a real wide receiver, and he's huge. I like that too.
I mean, good Lord. I think James Robinson is the must. Every week he's a must. I like Chark this week, but, it's a little bit interesting. And then Cooks is a smart look any week because he's just so clearly the wide receiver one. And I know that people can be underwhelmed by him, but the guy just produces. He's not that old, and there's not a whole lot of other options. I do like Nico Collins, but I wouldn't start in week one just because there's a lot going on here we don't know about. How effective is Tyrod going to be? How effective is Lawrence in that offense going to look? There's no way. If I had to pick, I'd pick the Jags, and I'd pick the under as well. But for me, just slot J-Rob in. Don't touch anybody else here just in case.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I will say my only concern with J-Rob is if they're behind, obviously this isn't a game I'm that concerned about it, but if they are behind, how much is he going to be in the ball? They do have quite a few good receivers out there, a little bit concerning. On the other side, we were talking about, the receiver room. Do we start Brandon Cooks? Is he a must start? He is clearly the receiver one, but the problem with that is your drop-off is to Chris Conley, Anthony Miller, Nico Collins, who I think Nico Collins could be good in time. But how much pressure is Brandon Cooks facing? It's not like they have a tight end that's taking off that pressure. And let's be honest, you're not loading the box for Mark Ingram and Phillip Lindsay. The benefit that any of these guys has is that Tyrod Taylor is my favorite thing, an efficient quarterback. He doesn't throw a lot of picks. He's not making dumb decisions with the ball. So it continues moving drives along, burns clock time. So, if I have guys starting against Tyrod, I probably don't want to start them as much because they're not going to touch the ball as much. He kind of demands the game clock.
Hey, revenge game for Chris Conley as well. The guy that left Kansas City for a role in Jacksonville that never materialized. So it'll be interesting to see. This guy's big and he's really fast. It really is kind of an odd situation that he's never panned out for much.
Yeah, not wrong. Well, talking about Kansas City, that moves us on to Browns at Chiefs, -6.5 Chiefs. Not a shock there, right? It's the Super Bowl losing Chiefs. Over under 54.5. Oh, by the way, I'm taking the under on Jags Texans, 45.5. I don't think this is going to be a great game. But Browns Chiefs, I'll take the over. I like both offenses. I don't love either defense. I don't think they're bad, but when we look at the teams here really quick, Baker Mayfield starting for the Browns with Nick Chubb, the best kicker in football, Kareem Hunt in the backfield. Receivers, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Rashard Higgins. And that tight end, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and Harrison Bryant. You can't even forget about their third tight end. He's a pretty solid option on most teams. And then looking at the Chiefs, you've heard every name on this list except for the backups, but it's Patrick Mahomes, CEH, Darrell Williams, Jerick McKinnon, Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, Travis Kelce, and then it gets to the backups where it's Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson that you might not be quite as familiar with. But, I mean, is there a starter in this game that you're not playing?
No.
Negative.
No. This is a playoff rematch.
All of them.
Of a really, really damn good game. And I'm betting you that Mahomes wants to shred these guys for the knockout blow. Which is honestly a really weird situation because he didn't actually get hit in the head. But I'm starting my Chiefs, and I'm looking at you, McCole Hardman. I have you everywhere, and everybody thinks I'm insane. And I'm holding on for that 6 touchdowns and 26 catches type efficiency that we saw a couple years ago, but I'm not holding my breath. But the Browns are all guys, I'm starting this game as well. There's serious fireworks and undertones. A real shootout potential here with these guys. OBJ back on the field. Like you said, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Jarvis Landry. Yeah, great kicker, Kareem Hunt. But we love seeing all these guys on the field, and it sounds like OBJ is actually legitimately 100% healthy, ready to go. And that dude, 100% ready to go, scary. And also one thing, just to point out the off-the-field stuff, you haven't heard a damn thing out of OBJ in quite some time. That means the guy's been just grinding, and that's exactly where you want him to be. I haven't been in a lot of leagues. I get a lot of trade offers for him. It's really, really, really hard to part with him because you know what that upside could be. This is a guy that had 3 straight, I believe it's 1,300-yard seasons in New York, 3 or 4 actually, to start his career, and he's really been ravaged by injuries. That talent didn't go away, and the fact that he had those numbers with Eli Manning and the gang in New York, Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry is a lot more help than he put those numbers up with. So I'm all in on that. And these guys could potentially see each other again. This is a really fun Week 1 matchup. I could definitely see Cleveland rolling into Kansas City again late in the playoffs. Maybe we're seeing a rivalry forming here, man.
Yeah, I think the Browns are going to do everything they can to run the ball, but this Chiefs offense is not going to be contained for the whole game. I love the Browns defense, but it's a Chiefs offense. It doesn't matter. But I'll take all the Nick Chubb I can get. I'll take it. I'll also take Hunt because they want to run the ball. They want to keep this offense off the field, and they can run the ball. Landry's the reliable receiver I'd play in like 50-50 formats. I'm going to avoid CEH mostly for the touchdown upside. And again, I just see all the weapons. And if they're trying to run the ball, I think they will effectively run the ball some. So I think the Chiefs are going to be in the air more. I know that doesn't hurt CEH. I'm not avoiding CEH. I'm avoiding him in like DraftKings. I still like him in this matchup, mostly for his pass catching upside. But for me, I mean, you can automatically plug in Tyreek, Kelce, and Mahomes in any DFS you'd like and be fine with it. I don't think like I said, I don't think Kansas City can stop a Cleveland run game. But for how long can Cleveland run with Kansas City passing like they will be? And then, like you said, Billy, Miko Hardman breakout time. This is going to happen this game. This is the wide receiver 2. For the first time in what I feel like is a while, they will have a real wide receiver 2 behind Tyreek, and then obviously Kelsey. But your second wide receiver is going to be a little more in stone this year with Hardman.
So I have to ask, right? We talked about how this is going to be an aerial attack, most likely for the Browns. They're probably not going to be able to run it all game at least. So it's Jarvis, Odell. Is it Higgins or DPJ? If you had to pick one, who's it going to be?
DPJ.
Week
No
1
real
Higgins.
reason. No real reason. You know, they're both
So
really
it's
talented guys.
Higgins, DPJ.
Yes.
All right. Is it just personal preference?
Yeah, it
I'll
really
take
is.
DPJ for the year, but for this week 1, the veteran. I'll lean the veteran, the guy with more experience.
I just like
He's
Michigan
proved
wide
himself.
receivers.
Yeah, I like him as well.
Yeah. I will say I think both of you are right? I think it is splitting hairs. I think it's no, I genuinely I think that neither guy is a wrong option going into the week. Obviously, at the end of the week, one of them is going to be the winner.
Sure.
If I had to pick one, and it's gut feeling, I think that's where you guys are at. It's toss of a coin. I like DPJ. It is by the thinnest of margins.
I'll tell you what
But
the big deal
that's where I
breaker is
would
for these two is if you were in a spot where you had to play a wide receiver and Rashard Higgins got you by a couple times, he's your guy. If you were like me and had to plug in DPJ into place for 3 last year in a pinch, you're a DPJ guy. So I really is preference. I do think whoever takes that wide receiver 3 role, if one of them really takes it, from the other guy, they're going to be worthwhile having on your bench for sure, especially as the season moves on. Those guys developing. If someone misses some time, you're stepping up into a pretty significant role right away.
Absolutely. Well, that moves us to our only divisional game of the week, actually. Dolphins at Patriots, -3 Patriots, over under 43.5. Kind of a weird one, right? I don't know what to think of either team. You have Tua, the lefty that's actually a righty, with Myles Gaskin, Malcolm Brown, Mike Gesicki, can't forget about him. Adam Shaheen on COVID this week, so he is out. Devontae Parker, Mac Hollins, Albert Wilson, Jalen Waddle, who technically is listed as their wide receiver 4 as of now in depth charts. I don't really believe that. Jakeem Grant, Preston Williams. Weird offense we got going there in Miami. For the Patriots, Mac Jones, if I'm not mistaken, the only quarterback on the roster right now. If either of you guys have who else is on there, that's the only guy I've got.
I believe they're planning to bring Hoyer back. I read a couple of days ago.
Okay.
I'm not sure it happened quite yet.
I was going to say, yeah, as of now, the only quarterback on the roster I was seeing was Mac Jones. A little weird. Damian Harris, J.J. Taylor. Obviously, they traded Sony Michel out to L.A., so he is gone. James White still there as well, and Ross Stevenson. And then receiver Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, some special teams guys. And then tight end, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, and Devin Asiasi. Do you want any of this game? Because I don't know what anything's going to look like other than maybe like Mike Gesicki. And even that, I
don't want Mike Gesicki against the Pats. They're terrible.
I'm not sold. Yeah.
So, firstly, Don Corleone in the comments. I'm Ryan, and Ryan is not expecting a high-scoring game here. Both these defenses are good. I prefer Miami, but from a fantasy perspective, I see nobody here with a clutch matchup. Question marks at both quarterback positions, obviously with the rookie and with Tua being basically a rookie in my eyes. I'm not really dipping into this. I'm leaving Gesicki as my starting tight end, obviously. He's going to be my starting tight end in a lot of places because I do think he has upside each week despite the matchups due to his athleticism. But really, yeah, I'm not going to be playing games with this game really at all this week just because of the defensive matchups. My sleeper name is Ryan Hicks 63. I think I know who this is. I think I've talked to him. But, Billy, what are you looking at here?
Yeah, so as far as the spread goes, let's get that out of the way. It's Patriots. Patriots are favored by 3, and that might be the easiest money of the week. One, Belichick against his former assistants it's not a good time for any of them. And I feel like the Patriots were all kind of riding that blah season last year in 2020. And just judging by the guys that sat out, due to COVID, that opted out of the season last year, the Patriots didn't have super high hopes for that season anyway. And I kind of always felt like Cam Newton was a one-year rental, to get by just with their quarterback situation with Tom Brady leaving. But I do expect the Pats defense to be much improved with those studs back that opted out in 2020. And I have real questions about the receiving core in Miami. Now, there's a lot of firepower and name value. But to be honest, the number one guy, Devontae Parker, never really impressed me. And it makes me feel funny when Jalen Waddle's listed down the depth chart as high as they drafted him. You think they'd be really excited to say, hey, look, this guy's the real deal. He's our number one, getting the fan base, kind of on board with taking a receiver that high. So I'm really concerned here about Miami. On paper, this is a fantastic Madden team. Don't get me wrong. Give me this team in Madden all day. But I'm just not that excited about it. The vibes I'm feeling coming into the year, I'm avoiding most of the Dolphins. I don't have very much of them. I have a Tua and a place or three, and really that's about it. Fuller still has a game left for that PED suspension as well, so he won't be on the field. Talked about Waddle, and how's he going to transition to how's he going to transition to the pro game? We saw Henry Ruggs come out of Alabama and kind of be pretty blah outside of the Chiefs game last year too. So these guys aren't locks to be top-notch guys just because they were drafted high. Let's not forget rookies don't do a ton, you guys. So I just have very few Dolphins, but Tua is definitely a sit at New England, as is Gesicki, just because of the matchup in New England. I mean, these guys held Darren Waller to like 3 catches for under 50 yards last year. I told you to sit Waller, and I got killed for it all over until Darren Waller didn't do anything against the Pats. So these guys are gnarly. Mac Jones is likely a sit too. I mean, don't forget this Dolphins defense is really tough. They had the NFL leader in interceptions last year. And who's the real serious receiving threat that scares you in New England? There really isn't one. The tight ends are back in full force with Jonnu and Hunter Henry. Those are 2 great guys, but I just don't see this being a big shootout, bunch of points. 2 tough defenses, 2 young quarterbacks. I don't think this is going to be a super interesting game for you in week 1 from a fantasy standpoint. Start both defenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, we see Don Corleone in the chat here, trash game. I don't think that's wrong from a fantasy perspective, right? It could be a good matchup in real life, but at the end of the day, it's nobody on either of these offenses scares me enough to really step up and make a difference. And even for the receivers, for Jalen Waddle, Tua doesn't scare me as a quarterback yet. I didn't see it last year. I don't know that I'm going to see it this year. So I'm hedging my bets a little bit for any receiver on the Dolphins until I see otherwise. And Mike Gesicki, I mean, Ryan, you've seen a few of the leagues I'm in for home weeks and stuff. I'm still taking Gesicki, but generally I'm getting him a little bit lower than I would have. People aren't picking him up as early, or I'm just kind of trying to get another tight end to back him up, because there's going to be games, I think, where the matchup is too strong, especially against a quarterback like Tua. James White, it could be a good year for James White, especially without Sony Michel there. You're looking at the competition of Damian Harris and
Austin
Ross
Eckler,
Stevenson.
right? You mean Austin Eckler?
Yeah,
right?
Austin Eckler.
Same guy.
Hey, I don't want to see disrespecting Gesicki paying his picks. This Mike gets the Sticky Icky. That's Magic Mike Sticky Icky. That's his name.
I mean, it's at the end of the day, I think that this is a game I am avoiding a bit, pretty much across the board. And I hate to say that, because I think there are a couple guys. Yeah, I'm interested to watch because I want to know how to proceed week 2.
Yes,
that's where I'm at.
Same.
So, but moving on, one that should be a bit more interesting from a fantasy perspective, at least. Packers -4 at the Saints, over under 50 points. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers leading the pack. He's back for another year. Who knows if it's past that? Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon behind him, Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, and Amari Rodgers outside. They did drop St. Brown, Equinemius St. Brown. And then Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis at tight end. I'm not sold on that tight end room. I hate it. And then in New Orleans, so Jameis, the starter, it sounds like. Taysom Hill backing him up. We're still going to, I'm sure, see him in a Taysom Hill role. Alvin Kamara in the backfield. Behind him, it's not great. Receivers, obviously Michael Thomas on the PUP list, so you won't see him. Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Deontay Harris, and Chris Hogan out there, as well as Ty Montgomery got brought in. And then Adam Troutman and Garrett Griffin, your tight ends. This is a weird one, right? I feel like there's some spots where these teams have weaknesses, but somehow the Packers, I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's what brings them up. The Saints, though, they're still a good team, quote unquote. Do we really think they're that good? I mean, even at -4, it seems like the Packers should blow this away.
Yeah, I'm way on the Packers side of this. I do like the over because I think the Saints are going to get some garbage time. I think the Packers come out and handle them quick early and build a pretty big lead. I can see the Packers scoring 35 of this 50 relatively quickly themselves. I really like Allen Lazard in Green Bay as not necessarily a receiving threat. I think I like him for what he does for the running game. And one thing I'm really monitoring behind Aaron Jones, who's a no-brainer start in this one, is does Kylan Hill take more of that RB2 or is it A.J. Dillon like we all expect? Because Kylan Hill is really an Aaron Jones clone, and he looked pretty damn good in this preseason. And we have a lot of passing game work that got left by Jamal Williams in this backfield. It doesn't necessarily suit A.J. Dillon's skill set very well. On the Saints side of the ball, I will start Jameis in this game because if there's anybody you want on your side in a shootout, it's Jameis Winston. The guy will sling it, but I am concerned about really the ceiling that the Saints have. Now, you hear the Saints, you think high octane, all that, but really the receiving threats are very subpar, and we're praying that some of these guys that we haven't seen step up yet can move into bigger roles and produce. Now, Jameis Winston's willing to throw some balls that a lot of people aren't. I think these guys will be okay. I think it's a lot of Kamara. And I'm picking up Tony Jones Jr., the back out of Notre Dame, everywhere I can. He already had Latavius Murray kind of on the roster bubble. And then the unwillingness for Latavius Murray to take a pay cut, they went ahead and just let him go. That's how they felt about this kid in my mind. And Kamara's not a 350 touch guy. His big thing is 100, 112 targets, 120 targets. In the passing game, that's going to leave a lot of carries, and he's always had that number 2. Mark Ingram was all-pro next to Kamara, just being that running threat out of the backfield. So I'm liking Tony Jones Jr. If you don't have him and he's available in your league, do yourself a favor and go pick him up now. Find a spot for him somehow, some way. I think the Saints' backfield is going to be valuable, and I think the passing game could be really hit and miss until Michael Thomas gets back to kind of even out the powers that be in that passing game.
Yeah, for me in this game, I'm playing all the Packers. Give me all of chip on the shoulder Rodgers. Like, that guy continues to invent reasons to be pissed off at the world. Adams is going to feast. I don't care who's covering him. It doesn't matter when Rodgers has that, zone in on him. Tonyan and Lazard are also worth monitoring in this matchup. I disagree. I think Tonyan showed some real, growth last year, and Rodgers got comfortable with him. I could see a lot of similar stuff from him this year. Obviously, Aaron Jones is a no-brainer. For the Saints, I think Winston is an intriguing play because the Packers are going to light him up. So with that offense being so prolific, I think Jameis, with all of his 2020 vision now, is something that I would consider in a DFS play. Callaway's the only receiver I'm really comfortable with right now here. And like Pangs was talking about earlier, he's got Jared Alexander. So for me, I'm not – there's more I like Adam Troutman. See, Cobb, I think he's more of a locker room presence. My problem with Cobb mostly is that he's an old man and he looks very ineffective. Despite being a veteran, he can contribute in minimal ways, in my opinion. I mean, 8 to 10 TDs, I think those are coming from Tonyan if that happens, and I don't really foresee him being a superior option to Tonyan at this point in his career. But the thing that I'm really excited about with this game, and it depends on where you're playing or what the league is, if Taysom Hill has tight end eligibility, my goodness gracious. You really got to get him in there. In any position other than quarterback, I'm all over Taysom Hill because he is going to get used. Even as like your third quarterback in a super flex league, you can just slot him in there, especially if Jameis goes down. Taysom is obviously very fantasy relevant, but in a position like tight end, he remains fantasy relevant regardless.
I love that you made that point, Ryan. I wish I would have touched on this, but I feel like a little bit of the nod on why Jameis ended up with this starting job is because Taysom Hill can play receiver and tight end, and Jameis Winston cannot. And the Saints are pretty damn thin at weapons, and I think that contributed to some to why Jameis won this job. I do think he's a better quarterback. However, I feel like Taysom Hill is Coach Sean Payton's guy, but he can do some things Jameis can't, and they can have him out there. There might be some funny business with some reverses and throwing type stuff. You never know.
It's tough to say that this isn't going to be a fun offense, right? I mean, obviously Taysom Hill moves all over the place. He's at running back, receiver, tight end, quarterback, punt returner, kick returner, punt coverage, head coach, assistant coach. What else is he at, right? I mean, at the end of the day, is that somebody that if he doesn't have tight end eligibility, if you're really in a pinch in like a 16-team league even as a super flex that you'd look at playing in a quarterback spot?
Yeah, I mean, I would just because the potential, especially if you get in a situation later into the year where bye week somebody's banged up, there's nothing available on the waiver wire. That's why that value. I mean, at tight end, I mean, what's he going to really do? Catch 3-4 balls a week, maybe? Maybe he scores you a touchdown. You're hoping that they pitch it to him or throw him a screen pass and he lets one go deep to somebody. Some stuff like that, or they get in the red zone and they just plug them in kind of a Tim Tebow package. Let them run, let them throw. I could see a lot of that happening when they get down in there in the red zone too, because it's really easy to stack the box. And when there's no real receiving threat for the red zone type stuff, Taysom kind of adds an element that's going to make defenses be honest, and they can exploit some matchup type stuff with him out there under center, kind of in like that wildcat type role type thing going on. I think Taysom Hill is going to find his way onto a lot more fantasy teams than he is right now.
Definitely some untapped potential there. But speaking of untapped potential, there's some on both sides of this next game. We have the Broncos -3 at the Giants, over under a 42 points. So we look at the Broncos here. Untapped potential to me, obviously, is going to mean Drew Lock on the bench, but you have Teddy Bridgewater starting. Running back Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, Nate McCrary behind him. And then the receiver room, pretty solid one at that. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, and KJ Hamler. And I'm even going to bring up Deontay Spencer as their wide receiver 5. And then at tight end, Noah Fant, Albert Okwuegbunam, Big O. It's a pretty solid team, right? Quarterback, the biggest question, I think, for anybody involved. And then the Giants, this receiver room, again, a pretty solid one. But Daniel Jones throwing the ball to him, Saquon Barkley, most likely back week 1 here. Devontae Booker and Gary Brightwell behind him. And then the receiver room, like we said, Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Kadarius Toney, and Colin Jackson, a guy we've talked about a lot on the show, is their receiver 5. Evan Ingram at tight end, somebody that, again, untapped potential. That's the theme at the moment. A lot of guys that, we had a lot to expect, but he hasn't really shown up. So what do we like in this game, right? By the way, I am Tom Blasco, the host at FFR Tom. But who do we like in this game? Is Evan Ingram going to blow up this year? Is Teddy Bridgewater going to be efficient enough? Again, my favorite word, efficiency. Is he going to be efficient enough? Is Javonte Williams going to take over as RB1? I feel like there's a lot of moving pieces into week 1 in this game.
Yeah, so I'll say sorry, Teddy. The Giants' defense is pretty dadgum good. I think that they're getting really, really slept on as far as defenses go. And I'm all over the Giants here overall, mostly because Saquon seems to be all systems go. They haven't had that in a while. It's going to really be a different situation because of that. Pitch counter, no. Booker's going to provide the backup necessary to be able to utilize that run game with Saquon, potentially limited. The Broncos secondary is the most expensive in the NFL. So this is going to be a big test for Daniel Jones. But for me, the big difference that we're going to be looking at is the amount of weapons he has and then the offensive line that should be vastly improved. I'm expecting this line to be average, not best in the league or anything, but coming from what they were last year, my gosh, it was bad. And this year they're going to be average. They got a year's worth of experience. They're all young. That's going to make a big difference. On the other side of the ball for the Broncos, I'm a little torn because I don't like Teddy Bridgewater as a fantasy quarterback. If you've been with us a year, you are well aware of this. I hated the Panthers last year because of it. And he actually had his best year ever, and it was still a crap fantasy year per se. Like, he really wasn't that good fantasy purposes. He's a better quarterback in real life than he is in fantasy. With Melvin Gordon, I like him better earlier in the year, with Javonte kind of taking over later in the year. So week one, I could see them being a viable play, Melvin Gordon. But the thing is, again, the Giants defense is salty. I think I'm going to avoid it this week. I'm going to lean Melvin Gordon a little bit earlier on in the year, but I think Javonte just slowly but surely, in a similar vein to Trey Sermon, although I think Sermon gets it earlier because I think Gordon's a bit better than Mostert. I think Javonte just continues to take it. And then Sutton as the comeback narrative, he missed basically the whole year last year. I'm interested to see the improved game of Judy. Can Bridgewater take advantage of all these weapons? But it's the Giants. I'll take the Giants even straight money. 42, I'll take the over just because I do think Bridgewater doesn't make a ton of mistakes. They could be relatively effective moving the ball with the kind of talent they have. I just don't see them being able to keep up with the Giants considering how good that defense is.
So
Real quick, Billy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love Kenny G.
I was going to say, for Melvin Gordon, just going to jump in on it. Melvin Gordon, I think week one is the starter. I think by week 3 or 4, it's Javonte. Kenny G, I like him. It's a deep receiver room in New York. A lot of guys to give the ball to. So I do have some minor concerns leading into week one. Not that I'm necessarily fading these guys, but if I have somebody else that I can start over them, I might do it just because I don't know what the distribution looks like, if you will. That's kind of my only concern in New York. Billy, what do you think of these guys?
So starting out on the Melvin Gordon talk for Don, I am in on Melvin Gordon, and here's why. He's played some of his best football last year in Denver. Yards per carry is a big one for me for a guy that everybody kind of thought that he looked washed up. Well, this is a guy that was really touchdown dependent to begin with his whole career in San Diego. I like the situation in Denver, and I feel like Philip Lindsay's absence leaves enough work for Javonte Williams to come in. Melvin Gordon had less than 220 carries last year. He was RB14. That leaves a solid couple hundred touches available for Javonte Williams as well. I think they're both viable guys. I think Melvin Gordon will be the lead back. Follow the money. $8 million this year, the final deal of his contract. There's no reason to go get your rookie guy hurt right now. This is not a playoff team. I don't think they expect to be a playoff team. I expect them to play better football with Teddy Bridgewater. However, Melvin Gordon is the experienced guy, and that seems to be kind of what they're going for, in my opinion, starting Teddy Bridgewater. If you want the firepower, you start Drew Lock and Javonte Williams right out of the gate and see what you got. I think both backs play. I like Melvin Gordon more than most people. He could be top 20 guy still to me without Javonte Williams, not getting a workload. And I don't think he cuts in to what Melvin Gordon got last year. So if you're in on Melvin Gordon last year, I don't think the situation changes. However, they did get an uptick in quarterback play, which always helps a little bit of the run game. I have high hopes for Melvin Gordon. I have him in a lot of places where I'm going to be relying on him in some flex spots. But in this game, I'm actually taking the Broncos, and I like the under because the Broncos defense is actually relatively good too. And Kenny Galladay's hamstring really worries me that the Giants are going to be able to get going. Saquon on a potential pitch count. Week one might have came about a week, 2 weeks early for the Giants. Tons of young talent in this game. Brought to you by us. I swear we talk about these guys all the time. So many pieces to love. And, all summer it's been a dead heap in the backfield with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. And I think they're both low-end RB2s by season's end. Cortland Sutton back and the growth of Jerry Jeudy that Tom and I are hoping for. I don't know if I know anybody higher on Jerry Jeudy than Tom, but as the summers went on, man, I am just I'm starting to get pissed when he doesn't make it back to me in some drafts because his ADP is just skyrocketing. But you cannot deny the talent. And Noah Fant with Teddy Bridgewater under center, I like a little bit more. He did practice in full, so Noah Fant will be on the field in week one. So that's all good news. The Giants have some question marks. Like I said, Saquon's pitch count, Galladay, Darius Slayton, and Sterling Shepard. Don't get me too excited against the Broncos defense that has shown the ability to get to the quarterback and be stingy at times. But I'm looking for Kenny Golladay to make that immediate wide receiver 1 impact for this Giants team to really get off the ground. They really, really need that. I love Darius Slayton as a wide receiver 2. I love Sterling Shepard as a wide receiver 2. If Kenny Golladay comes in and does what he does, that's going to be 2 guys that get a lot of balls, a lot of touchdowns, more than what you would expect. I think Golladay is going to be a decoy a lot of the time, and if they can get him on the field, it is so important to get Golladay on the field. They need him so bad. Slayton should flash, and Ingram needs to be more efficient, but tons and tons of potential in this game. I'm excited to watch this game. A lot of young teams. There's a lot of growth that's going to happen with these teams actually having an offseason, too. That was one thing I felt held Daniel Jones in this offense back was, 1, no real offseason for Daniel Jones, and number 2, Saquon getting hurt pretty close to the beginning of the year really threw a wrench in their plans on offense. So I'm excited to see these guys healthy. Unfortunately, it may not be in September before they really get off the ground and get going. Bronco at the bookie here for sure for me.
Yeah, I mean, I want to comment one thing. If Kenny G's healthy, I think we all really love him. I just want to see him healthy. That's my biggest thing for him.
Everywhere I have him, I just even if he is healthy, I'm probably going to shy away from starting him because I want to see it first.
Yeah, and like I said in the chat, it's the biggest thing with him, to me at least, is where are you drafting him? I think the value's there. I don't think he's getting overdrafted necessarily, but if somebody reaches for him just because it's Kenny G, he's the number 1 receiver on the Giants. I've been in home drafts. I'm in the Northeast, so I've seen guys that are Giants fans that grab him. It's easy to overdraft. So that's my only hesitation. Jerry Jeudy, though, I mean, best route runner out of that draft. Top 3 probably route runner in the league. The man's a stud. So big fan of him if you haven't figured that out. But moving on, we got 2 games left here. Bears-Rams, Sunday Night Football. Rams -7.5, over under 46.5. So a little bit of an interesting one. Bears, obviously you bring in the rookie quarterback Justin Fields, not starting. It's going to be the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton, followed behind him by David Montgomery, Damian Williams, Khalil Herbert. No Tariq Cohen just yet. He is injured still. Receiver room, Allen Robinson, one of the more underrated guys you'll see out there. Darnell Mooney, money with 2 O's. Marquise Goodwin, he'll be good for about 2 games. Damiere Byrd, Brashad Perriman brought in from Detroit. And then at tight end, Cole Kmet, another great receiver that hasn't really broken out, but does he have the ability to do it? Jimmy Graham's still there. Jesse James, another, it's a guy that had a lot of potential but never showed up. The Rams, on the other hand, brought in Matthew Stafford, obviously traded for Jared Goff there, but bringing in Sony Michel after after Akers went down, Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson as his backup, and then Jake Funk behind him. Receiver room, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Robert Woods, a.k.a. Bobby Trees, and Deshaun Jackson, as well as Tutu Atwell. And that tight end, Tyler Higbee, and Johnny Munt. Not a lot for 2 receiver sets for him this year. You did lose Gerald Everett to the Seahawks. So some interesting propositions. Bryson Hopkins, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but
I like him.
Obviously, the big news in this game is going to be the quarterback position. You're not starting your rookie quarterback. You brought in Matt Stafford over Jared Goff. Personally, I'm a big fan of Stafford. I think he's great. I think he was wasting a lot of career in Detroit. No offense to Detroit fans out there. I think you're on the same page as me. Your team generally kind of sucks. I hate to say it, but I think you're aware if you're a Detroit fan. So what does that do to the Rams, right? Bringing in Matthew Stafford, does that elevate this team that much?
To me, absolutely. It is a humongous upgrade, not just on the surface, the player. I'll get to that in a second, Don. So let's just get into this. Rams by a lot, okay? It's kind of a travesty that they threw the Bears under the bus for Week 1 Sunday Night Football. The whole world's going to be watching. And I'm going to take the over 46.5 because another matchup where I feel like the Rams could eat up a pretty solid amount of that 46 points. And I was going to say, to your point in your question there, Don, this is Andy Dalton's first and last start in Chicago. He will need to be out of this game by the end of this game. Once Fields goes in, there's no looking back, guys. This defense is nasty in LA. I think it's going to be a bloodbath in Los Angeles. Sit all of your Bears. You're likely starting Montgomery, but temper your expectations in this matchup. This is a really good defense. The Rams should have all fine days, but who will be the wide receiver 3 there? Is it Van Jefferson? Or Van Jefferson's gone, excuse me. Is it Deshaun Jackson, Tutu Atwell? We've got some other guys laying around. That'll be really interesting to me because I think with Matthew Stafford, they're going to be able to support a playable wide receiver 3 like the elite offenses that we've seen. I love Higbee. He's definitely a start in this one. And the running back's a big piece of this system in LA with Sean McVay. Who will we see emerge? I actually think Sony is a top 20 running back in LA with the Rams, but I could see it being a bit of a slow start, being that he was just acquired, within a couple weeks of the season starting. So Henderson will have a role as well, always. Maybe he's the lead guy for this first matchup, and I think it's just sooner than later that Sony takes a grip and Henderson kind of fades. And McVay likes to feature a guy. He doesn't like to break up all the running back touches. He likes one guy just to feed, and get going. So Sony Michel, to me, you don't trade for him to not do that with him. That's kind of the guy that he is. So I like that fit there as well. But Justin Fields' season starts by the third quarter.
Okay, for me, it's Monty for life, baby. Montgomery for life. So I'm not starting him in DraftKings tournaments or anything, but obviously, like you said, you're starting Montgomery. But I think I'm going to buck the trend here. I'm expecting the Bears to win. That is, like you said, I just heard you, Billy, and I think you're in the more popular consensus. But I like Kmet to be emerging here. I think Cole Kmet is going to be a difference maker in this game. Mooney should thrive with all the attention Robinson's going to get. And I think Robinson can be effective in this game, just not in a fantasy perspective, because he can draw Ramsey and get defensive attention.
Absolutely.
So with Dalton, he's a veteran. I mean, we've seen what he is. I obviously think Fields is going to be starting sooner rather than later, but I think Dalton's going to have to lose 2 games. And I think this might not be one of them. I'm not saying that the Bears are contenders or anything, but they have a pretty good offensive line if healthy, combined with what is still pretty salty defense, along with Stafford in a new system that his targets, in my opinion, don't naturally fit with what he usually did. I think it's just going to be a time thing for them where week 3 or 4, I don't think I'm going to be having the same issue with this offense. But right now, I think the Bears in an upset. And I think Mooney is going to be the fantasy star with Kmet having quite a good game for a tight end as well. But, for me, on the other side of the ball, I'm very scared. I'll take Stafford because I do think he's going to score. But I'm scared of the run game week 1. I like Bobby Trees the best. But for me, I think that this is going to be a Rams letdown, and I'm going to try to avoid them as much as I can. I agree. I think Robinson can be effective with a quarterback like Dalton, who can kind of, again, he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. I thought he looked effective last year in Dallas. I think y'all kind of agreed. He wasn't special or anything, but this is a backup quarterback to have, and starting week 1 with the rookie, it makes sense to me.
So real quick, I just want to point out, talking about Dalton can make A-Rob, he doesn't need to make A-Rob. Allen Robinson's a good receiver. I mean, this is a guy that put up the last 2 years. It was 1,150 nears mixed no difference yards and 1,250 with 7 and 6 touchdowns respectively. This is a really good receiver. And by the way, he had a 1,400 yard season back in Jacksonville, right? It's not somebody that we need to sniff, up our nose at, right? He has the ability. So definitely don't think that's the issue. I think this week I'm big on A-Rob. I'm not starting him because he's up against Jalen Ramsey. And we know that Jalen Ramsey is a top 3 corner in the league. I'm not going to say best because I already have an opinion about who is best. Wide receiver 1 relevant. I don't think that even takes Dalton. I think A-Rob is right up there regardless of which quarterback is on the field for him here, whether it's Dalton or Fields.
I think Dalton's a good quarterback, but here's why I think things change and quickly. There's a guy in the middle named Aaron Donald that Andy Dalton is not going to be able to get away from. And it's going to be extremely hard for a whole lot to happen with him in your face. So I feel like relatively quick, they move to try to get out of the pocket, and that's what Justin Fields does.
Yeah, that Bears O-line, if healthy, is pretty salty, guys, though. That could be one of the best units in the league.
This is an ugly game.
The Bears O-line is very good. if they're healthy, they're very good. I can see them trying to enforce their will on what is obviously a super talented defense. But I think that the biggest undersell here that most people aren't considering is that the Bears offensive line can enforce their will on people if they're all 100%.
I mean, I don't entirely disagree with it, right? We're going to keep this short because we're not going to dig into offensive line. To me, it's, James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, good. Elijah Wilkinson, Sam Mustipher, Jermaine Ifedi's okay at best at right tackle.
Jason
I think you have two good guards. He's not even starting for him.
Is he? Oh, is he not starting?
And by the way,
I haven't
no.
looked at the
And
depth chart.
at the end of the day, Jason Peters, I've seen Jason Peters for how many years now? He is not effective anymore at tackle, especially at guard. Maybe they do have him listed at tackle, and at tackle, the man is not what he used to be. He was phenomenal. He was a Hall of Famer, I think, at left tackle. Genuinely, maybe not first ballot, but a Hall of Famer. He can't do it anymore. He's not a tackle. He cannot get out there. So, but regardless, I think A-Rob, long-term wide receiver one this week, not the week. I do love Montgomery. Again, maybe not the week just because you're getting stuffed. So I wish they had Cohen this week. I think Cohen would be the guy if he was healthy, just because they're going to be throwing the ball a bit. But with all that being said, takes us into the final game of the week. With the worst quarterback in the NFL, Ravens -4.5 at Raiders, over under 50.5. If you watch the show, you understand why I'm saying worst quarterback in the league. It's because I am not a Lamar Jackson guy. Unfortunately, they got rid of Trace McSorley. He's on their practice squad right now. But the bad news for Baltimore is that other than running back Lamar Jackson, they've lost 2 running backs to season-ending injuries. So they're now down to Gus Edwards. They did bring in Le'Veon Bell, though I believe, is on practice squad right now. I'm not expecting to see him this week. So it's going to be Gus Edwards, Tyson Williams, and Trenton Cannon. Receivers, Sammy Watkins, Marquise Brown, James Prochet, Devin Duvernay. And then tight end, Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle. Some solid options at tight end for him, at least. The Raiders, on the other hand, led by Derek Carr, it is a solid team. I'm not going to say it's bad. My biggest concern, they blew up this offensive line a bit this year, into the offseason. Richie Incognito, really their best option at 38, and then Alex Leatherwood. But Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake brought in Peyton Barber as well. Receivers, Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, Zay Jones, and Willie Snead. With tight end, Darren Waller, top 3-4 tight end in the league without question, I think, with Foster Moreau backing him up. A lot of tight end play in this one. Quarterback play, I think, is underrated. I don't think Derek Carr is that bad. Receivers is kind of a hit or miss, and running back is Josh Jacobs the guy, right? How much is Kenyon Drake going to steal from him? What do you guys think? I mean, that's the one I'm really most interested in. What's this running back room look like? Gus Edwards, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake. What's that spread look like for them?
The Gus Edwards show. It's Gus Bus all day today. Lamar may have to throw, though, because I think Vegas can score on them. Even though the Baltimore defense is fantastic, I think the Vegas offense is going to be put in a position to score on anybody this year. But they won't be able to stop Baltimore. Carr makes an interesting pivot in DFS for me. I know that the Baltimore would like to try to control the clock, and so Carr likely gets less attempts, but they're going to have to throw to keep up. Waller's virtually unguardable, and they have speed with Ruggs. The upside for Edwards year 2 is real. We saw flashes really early in year 1, but it's not the receivers that you're going to be dealing with. Also, Renfrow is a tough cover in the slot, but these guys are mostly going to be they're just going to be serviceable. It's going to be Waller, and it's going to be the backfield. The Jacobs-Drake backfield, they're going to try to run on Baltimore, but these guys can be used out through the air as well. So I expect Vegas to be able to move the ball, but Baltimore's run game is just too much. So it's in Gus we trust. That's all my saying all year is going to be, because Gus Edwards is fantastic. This is the opportunity he's been waiting for. He's not J.K. Dobbins per se, but they really have one of the best backup running backs in the league. And then obviously you have Mark Andrews with the touchdown upside. It's going to be realized here. So I want exposure to Gus and Andrews.
Yeah, so just the spread standpoint, I like the Ravens. 4.5 seems like pretty easy money. However, it is in Las Vegas, Baltimore on the road. really unfortunate summer for Baltimore. A guy that we were really, really, really high on and excited to see, J.K. Dobbins. Gus is better than Dobbins. Oh, my goodness.
Not going to say that. Pinto
Okay.
is rolling over wherever he is right now.
Yes. Pinto's
Rolling over in his bed
he's
wherever
logging
he
on
is.
right now.
Yeah.
From
He just had a
Pinto's
stroke.
going to just pop up here.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
6 yards of carry last year. J.K. Dobbins had. It's very hard to be better than that. But blow after blow in their backfield after losing J.K. and then Justice Hill, who's a guy that had monster numbers at Oklahoma State that, given a chance, had some decent upside. He just really never got unburied from this depth chart and really was in line for a decent workload and probably a bit of a breakout in the fantasy community. I still think they dominate the Raiders. Waller's a must start, and I'm avoiding Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards in this Week 1 matchup. I think you have to. Neither one of them made you guys have to start them, have to have them last year. Henry Ruggs, obviously the name value, really underachieved last year for us. But I think we're going to see much more Kenyon Drake than Josh Jacobs owners, including Pinto, would like to see. Gus Edwards is in for a workload and a half, and I'm also scooping up Tyson Williams along with that Tony Jones pick I gave you all earlier. Tyson Williams is a back that I really liked in the preseason. Go watch a couple highlights of him and just watch the way the guy moves. He's got all the makings of being a pretty good running back. I think he was just buried by some other pretty damn good running backs. So him getting a workload, I don't think it's going to be necessarily what the J.K. Gus Edwards split. I think Gus gets a little bit more featured. This Tyson Williams guy is going to be worth a flex spot for sure in my mind, just on sheer volume alone in Baltimore. This team runs the ball an incredible amount. I see no reason to fear Le'Veon Bell just yet. They just need bodies at this point. Running backs and really Le'Veon Bell, when he walks on the field, everybody pays a little bit more attention. Whether he's washed up or not, people know who he is. Sammy Watkins explosion Week 1. Again, I like it. Hollywood Brown's been banged up with the hamstring all year. Rashad Bateman also banged up. Really, it's Sammy Watkins and some unhealthy guys and Mark Andrews. So I like that explosion right out of the gate here. And I think Andrews and Watkins are in for pretty nice days against the Raiders secondary. And not that I'm a Lamar Jackson fan, but you're definitely starting him, especially, against the Raiders. Where you took Lamar Jackson, he's your guy. And I think he gets off to a nice start Week 1. Maybe not crazy numbers because I think ultimately the run game is going to be extremely effective against the Raiders. But I think give me the Ravens -4.5 all day long.
Yeah, same. I agree.
So I have to ask, long term, is Le'Veon Bell gonna? Not is. I guess it's how much is Le'Veon Bell gonna cut into Gus Edwards shares?
1%.
I don't know if he does.
1%.
Yeah, I don't know if he does. Honestly, I think he's got to be a depth guy because you saw nothing on tape anytime recently that makes you think this guy's going to come in and do something that Gus Edwards can't.
Yeah, he can't contribute anymore. In my opinion, he's done.
Yep, I agree.
And I agree with Don. It's going to be Waller, Jacobs, Drake show all year. I wish Scott was here for us to cover the Raiders. Of course, we got him Monday night, so we couldn't stay.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, I think Waller, Jacobs, Drake is going to be the fantasy guys with Ruggs having one of them big games when he catches 3 balls for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's what Ruggs is. He's a lot like a guy on the other side of the ball, Marquise Brown. Oh no, Lev Bell is not going to take the RB on the practice squad. Maybe the RB2 spot. I can't see him taking the RB2 spot.
Now
here.
this Tyson Williams guy,
Williams.
I did my homework. He is the real deal. This kid is a good player, and I'm excited everywhere I got a piece.
Me too. I wouldn't even touch Lev Bell.
No, absolutely. And especially this week, like we said, he's on practice squad currently. He's not going to be the guy. Cannon, hey, it might be worth a flex, but it's a flyer, right? I think that's the best we can put it. You're really taking a shot. Even Tyson Williams, you might be taking a little bit of a shot, but I think right now it's kind of the volume, right? He has more touches. He has more experience with the offense from what I've seen, at least, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's going to be the lead back for the RB2. But that is every matchup this week, right? We have gone just over 2 hours. Clearly, we need to get back into the swing of these full 16-game weeks. But we appreciate everyone tuning in. Really quick, guys, just tell them where they can follow you at, where they can find you. If you look below, it has all of our @s on Twitter. I mean, guys, tell me if I'm wrong. Feel free to message us for questions, advice. If you have questions about who you want to start, Bell wins over Canada Monopoly. Yes, it does for that RB3 position. But no, if you have questions about who to start, I mean, the three of us are happy to help. At Fantasy FR Live, at FFR Tom, for myself. Ryan, what do you got going on? Where can they follow you at?
You can follow me at Real Ryan Hicks, Sleeper Ryan Hicks 63. That's where I spend most of my days. Just excited for the St. Jude Bowl to be kicking off. I'm not on Twitter that much, but I do get on every once in a while, especially if I read something that I really like. I want to share that. So, but talking football or lineup choices or anything like that, all day, every day. Again, you've got a better chance of getting me on Sleeper, but you can message me on Twitter, and I will get it at some point throughout the day. We're just really excited getting to talk football again, like real football, like games tomorrow football. That feels so good. Obviously, it's fun in the offseason covering Dynasty. It's fun in the offseason prepping for the year, but God, in the 100+ drafts we've done now and everything that we're doing and getting ready, it's finally here. I know y'all are as excited as we are. We cannot wait for football to start tomorrow. Can't wait to see y'all next week and talk about week 2.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited for next week's show when we actually get to dissect some actual football and not just what we've projected or our gut feelings going into the year. But check me out at bwit24, and obviously check us out at Fantasy First Rounders on Twitter as well. Hit us up for any lineup, trade questions, start sit stuff. We're there for all of it, and we love to help out. So don't be bashful about DMing, tagging us all on Twitter. Catch us how you can, Sleeper even, and we're more than happy to answer anything you want to do. And usually when we get questions, we kick it to each other and get a lot of input from each other really quick too. So you're getting kind of all of us in one, whichever way you go. So don't be afraid to hit us up. Let's talk football. Catch us next week. Let's see how this season goes. Man, I'm glad real football's back. Fans, COVID less of an impact. Let's play some football.
Yes.
Absolutely, boys. Like you said, tag all of us, tag one of us. You're gonna get all of us. If you only tag one of us, we're probably gonna message the others and make sure we get kind of a full spectrum of ideas. Lord knows we have the stats, we have the hot takes, we have it all. We appreciate everyone tuning in week 1 NFL season here. We'll be back next week with the high scores at the very least of the St. Jude Bowl. If you're not in it, be ready for next year. That's what I have to say. And, again, we appreciate everyone tuning in. This has been the Fantasy First Rounders, and hope you guys have a great week of football.